Welcome back to an episode of Ministry Truth. I'm your number one host on this show. And good morning, softer ass feelings. How you doing this morning? We're going to go over two interviews. If you guys are wanting to stay, they're about an hour long each. Did y'all hear that? They're both with Donald Trump from 1 year ago and Kristen Welker, and an interview they had there. And then we're going to fast forward a year to another interview between Donald Trump and Kristen Welker. I'm just curious how much a year has changed between these two, and Kristen Welker's still a piece of shit when it comes to interviews. And Vivek did call her out of the debate, and all she could do was sit there and smile. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, before we get into anything, I've got to play some music because, well, I fucking feel like it. And you don't like this? Cool. Just hit mute till it's over. And let's get into the video because fuck it, why not?
If you lie to the government, they'll put you in prison. But when they lie to all of us, it's called being a politician. You think taking guns away will save our kids from the killings, but you're pro-choice, abortion kills way more children. If America's so terrible and racist, it probably isn't safe to encourage immigration. Just saying, all the contradictions are embarrassing. You know who hates America the most? Americans. Trigger warnings used to be on TV for seizures, and now they're everywhere to protect millennials' feelings. He, she, his, him, hers, them, they. Screw a pronoun, cause everyone's a retard these days. I hear them preaching at the protest that hatred's the problem, but hating straight men, white folks, and Christians is common. Coca-Cola telling people they should be less white. They preach intolerance, but if you disagree, they fight. There's a race war here, elections based on fear. Black lives only matter once every 4 years. Soldiers died for this country, and every one of us benefits. Give welfare to the bums and forget about the veterans. Black folks and white folks divided by the news, but we are all the same. We are red, white, and blue. Ashamed to be American? Okay, that's cool. Cause honestly, we are all ashamed of you too.
Y'all are so fake. Oh no. The forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa. You can make us see it your way. No way. Gasoline and propane. More flames. Oh no. No more snowflakes.
They set us up to fail, that's what they built the system for. Put an ammunition shop across the street from a liquor store. Empowering women used to be different than this before. The role models got OnlyFans or dance on a stripper pole. Screw it, I ain't tripping, I don't mean to be mean, but if our children are the future, then our future is bleak. They take an Adderall to focus, hit McDonald's to eat. They're addicted to phones and they take Xanax to sleep. They blurred the lines dividing communism and democracy. In 2021, we paint the patriots as Nazis. The men playing women's sports get trophies for winning. Like, great, let's celebrate a man for beating some women. If you're black, your life matters. You're supposed to embrace it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So I got two interviews, one from a year ago, one from this year, including Donald Trump and NBC's anchor Kristen Welker, who's, oddly enough, I have, a little, I'd smash. But let's talk about future projects today. I will be working on a stream for Israeli Defense Force and drones. Sorry, I haven't even started smoking yet. We're going to talk about drones and New Jersey and why I think it's Israel. And it's history repeating itself. And there's a lot of shit about New Jersey that just doesn't make sense. And how their biggest trade partner is Israel. It's crazy. They have a whole commission. Along with that, we're going to talk about a specific pardon Donald Trump, Joseph Robinette Biden did when he released Jin, a Chinese national college student from MSU that got caught with 6 terabytes and over 49,000 images of CSAM, was sentenced to 8 years in prison. And guess what? Joe Biden pardoned him and said, hey, go back to China. Don't come back. Granted, we did trade 3 prisoners, but we just released a guy with tons of child pornography. We sending him back to China where, guess what? It's probably only going to get worse, and more kids are going to get hurt. Way to go, Joe. But before, like I said, let's get into our first story of the day. It's not a story. It's Kristen Welker.
Welcome back to.
And like I said, there've been a lot of talk about the one he did recently that I haven't watched yet. And this is a good time for me to watch. So we're doing a recap from a year ago, like I said, and then we're going to see what happened this this month or last month. It doesn't matter. I hope you're here to listen. I hope you're here to listen to them. I hope you're here to listen to me, because that's pretty much all that happens on this channel. So let's do this.
To meet the press.
Thank you.
I want to dive right into this, a lot to get to.
Good.
There are a number of things that make your campaign unprecedented. You are the first former president to run for re-election in more than 100 years. You are facing 4 indictments. You have an incredibly significant lead in the GOP primary polls. But I want to ask you this, Mr. President. Why do you want to be president again?
Well, it's a very simple answer, and I can give it very easily. It's called Make America Great Again. Our country is in serious trouble. I don't think we've ever been so low in terms of certainly opinion, world opinion, and country opinion. People are devastated. They look at what's happening with millions of people coming in, millions of illegal immigrants coming into our country, flooding our cities, flooding the countryside.
400,000
I
missing.
think the number is going to be 15 million people by the time you end this. By the end of this year, I think the real number is going to be 15 million people. They come from prisons. They come from mental institutions, insane asylums. They say, sir, please don't use that term, but it's true. They're terrorists at a level. It was very interesting. On NBC, I saw a poll, and I saw some statistics, and it said in 2019, there were no terrorists. They caught no terrorists. There was nothing that they saw. There was no anything. And now, this year, it's a record number like they've never seen before. So we did a great job at the border. We did a great job with the military. We did a great job with inflation. We had essentially no inflation. We had a great economy.
Well, 2% still inflation.
And we didn't have an Afghanistan disaster. We were getting out, but we were going to get out with dignity and pride, not the way they got out. That was a surrender and an embarrassment and horrible. We gave $85 billion worth of equipment to the Taliban. We had death, so much death and so much horrible destruction. And it was a terrible thing. I think it was the lowest point in the history of our country. Now, with all of that, we can change it and we can make America great again. And that's why I'm doing this.
Well, and you have talked about a lot. We are going to delve into a number of issues you brought up. You talked about all the people coming across the border. Of course, a lot of families also coming across the border as well. I want to talk to you about that a little bit later on. But first, let's talk about the breaking news today. We learned just a short time ago that the president's son, Hunter Biden, was indicted by a federal grand jury on 3 gun charges. Given that, Mr. President, can you continue to say that there are 2 systems of justice?
Well, I think there's no question about it. He had a plea deal that was the deal of the century, the art of the deal. You could write a book on it, the art of the deal. And all of a sudden that was broken up by a judge who was able to, a brilliant judge actually, who was able to see through what was happening. And it's a sad situation. I mean, nobody should be happy about this. I'm not happy about it. Nobody is. It's a very sad thing. It's so bad for our country.
About an hour and 10 minutes.
But, you know, if you think about it, I've been under investigation from the day I came down the escalator. And a phony investigation, fake investigations, investigations that I beat every single time, still under investigations. But it's a very sad thing, and it's a slippery slope, and dangerous, very dangerous for our country.
But you talked about the plea deal, but now Hunter Biden's been indicted. He's facing very serious charges. So doesn't that undercut your entire argument that there are 2 systems of justice?
Oh, no.
It's one of 12 charges. There are 12.
It's so funny how a year changes, and Hunter Biden is now a free man, free from everything from the past since 2014.
Possible charges.
And he's still under
investigation. This is the only charge
investigation.
that doesn't affect his father.
Well, he's still under investigation.
Well, sure, maybe. I mean, let's see what happens. But this is the only charge that doesn't affect Joe Biden. This was the gun charge. But gun charges are very serious. You know, people have had gun charges and gone to jail for a lot of years. I pardoned some people who I thought it was just horrible what happened, but they were put in jail for many years. Rappers,
1,500 people
and
in a
others.
month.
So look, it's a bad thing, but it's one of 12, and it's the one charge that doesn't affect Joe Biden.
Well, of course, there's no evidence that the president has any link to his son's business dealings. Let me ask you, though,
I don't
second.
necessarily agree. He called in. You mean he called in all these meetings? He was calling in on the meetings. He was put on speakerphone and every single day, and
the witness
literally
testified.
many calls. And what about the fact that he got rid of the prosecutor for $1 billion.
Well, the witness who testified.
You don't get rid of this prosecutor, we're not giving you $1 billion to Ukraine. He said that. I mean, there are a lot of things here.
Mr. President, the witness who testified, though, said that he never heard any discussion of business when President Biden was put on the phone.
Wait a minute. You saw the prosecutor thing on television, because I saw it on your network.
Oh.
He said, you don't get rid of this prosecutor, I'm not giving $1 billion.
Facts.
That was looked into as well. And as you know,
And
there was
proven.
never any wrongdoing.
If I ever said that, quid pro quo.
Let's move on to
Quid
what
pro
a second
Joe.
Trump term would look
Sure.
like. When you launched your campaign in March, you told the crowd, quote, I am your retribution. What does that mean? What does that look like?
I think retribution is talking in terms of I have to protect people. What they're doing to people is so horrible. They're putting people in jail for long periods of time. Firemen, policemen, accountants, even lawyers. They're in prisons for years now and don't even have trials in some cases. And if you look at Antifa and other groups,
They're
practically
free.
nothing happened to them. They burned down Portland. They burned down Minneapolis. They took over Seattle. I mean, they literally took over a big chunk of the city. People died and nothing happened to them. We have to protect all people.
But when you talk about retribution, are you talking about directing your attorney general to try to go after your political enemies?
When I talk about retribution, I'm talking about fairness. We have to treat people fairly. These people on January 6th, some of them never even went into the building, and they're being given sentences of, many years.
Are you going to pardon
And nothing
those
is
people who've been
happening.
convicted?
Well, I'm going to look at them, and I certainly might if I think it's appropriate. No, it's a very, very sad thing, and they're dividing the country so badly, and it's very dangerous.
Well, Mr. President, we're going to delve into that a little bit later on, but I want to stay
What
on
about
this idea of what you mean by retribution. Are you looking to appoint an attorney general who will prosecute the people you tell them to prosecute?
I'm looking to appoint an attorney general who's going to be tough on crime and fair. Very simple.
And go after your political enemies?
No, I would never do that. But Biden has done that. Look, Biden, these aren't indictments against me. These are Biden indictments. This isn't God coming down and very fairly said, Joe, you spoke badly about an election. The election was rigged. There's no question about that. There's so much proof on it. Even if you go to the more modern day proof with the, they call it Twitter files, FBI and Twitter, or you take a look at the Amazon stuff or the Google stuff, or you take a look at
January
2000
6th
News,
FBI.
you take a look.
At least 26 FBI agents were on ground. At least 5 entered the building.
Look at all of the
right,
ballot stuffing that's on tape. You take a
You
look
can
at the
put the
fact
link in
that
it
the
you wanted to
legislatures
watch it.
didn't approve a lot of the things that were done in the elections, and they had to approve. And we could go on forever. We could go on forever. But no, I want somebody that's going to be strong, respected, tough, and fair.
Just to go back to a couple of the points you said, the ballot stuffing, that's something that's been debunked.
It hasn't been
As you
debunked.
know,
It's on camera.
But I do want to keep moving forward.
Yeah,
And
but
of
Kristen,
course,
it's on camera. Hundreds and even thousands and thousands of people. You take a look through the vote.
No, sir.
Take a look. It's on camera.
But Mr. President,
they have
you know,
thousands
Republican
of pictures.
officials
But
and
I know,
top
but
law
Kristen, you can't
enforcement
say it.
officials have
They
told
have
you that
thousands
that's
of pictures of
debunked.
people. I know you have to say that for your network, but you shouldn't say it.
Thanks, Zip.
Because that's the problem.
But, Mr.
The
President, that's
news
the
has
truth,
lost
and you've been
such
told that.
power.
Let's stay on track, though, Mr. President. Let's stay on
But
track
you're
with
saying
this question.
it hasn't. We have thousands of essentially motion pictures of people stuffing the ballot boxes.
But, Mr. President,
tens of thousands.
they're not stuffing the ballot boxes, and you've been told that by your top law enforcement officials. But let's stay on track because we have so much ground to cover.
You have
We
people that went
policy ground
and voted
to cover,
in one
Mr.
place,
President.
another place, another place.
Zip. Next time you speak to Bon Bon, tell her I said hi.
As many as I understand, 28 different places in one day with 7, 8, 9 ballots apiece. They can't do anymore because it would look too phony. These were professional people. They were stuffing the ballot boxes. It's there.
Mr.
I mean, it's there to
You took
see.
your
A lot of
case
people don't
report,
like looking at it.
60 different cases
Just like
all across the
looking at it.
country. You lost that, but let's stay on track.
We
because
lost
have
because the
so
judges
many-
didn't want to hear them.
Mr. President,
but
we have
if
so
this
many
if
topics
this were
to
ever before a court, we would win so easy. There is so much evidence that the election was rigged, and you may not even put the section on your show, and you'll have to decide what you want to do. But people know it was rigged. Look, the media,
Mr. President,
when I
there's
first
no
got
evidence
involved
of
in
that.
politics.
As you know, there's no evidence of that. We have so many different topics.
Tremendous evidence.
I want to talk about what a
Listen,
potential...
let me ask you this.
Mr.
You agree
President,
there was Twitter files, right?
Mr. President...
You agree there were 51 intelligence agents that lied. You agree with
I'm
that?
not the one who's being interviewed. Let's
Well, no,
stay
but-
on track
I know,
because
but
I want to talk about...
that's rigging the election.
Because that's what voters want to hear about, Mr. President. Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill right now.
Go ahead.
Really? I didn't know that.
Announced that he was launching an impeachment inquiry this week into President Biden. Do you see this as a part of the retribution that you seek?
No, not at all. I think, look, you look at the terrible things that have been happening with
Dude, he
respect to
looks
Biden.
like a fucking dead.
Look at everything. Jamie Comer, Jim Jordan, who are fantastic people and very legitimate people. I watched Jamie Comer just a little while ago talking about a lot of different facets of what's going on. And he was the one that said, I guess there are 12 things where it looks like it's stone cold guilty. And the gun charge is only one of the 12. He said this is the only one that doesn't implicate Joe Biden.
So, but my question for you, did you talk to Speaker McCarthy about this House impeachment inquiry?
No,
did
I don't
you
talk to him.
tell him that he should open a House
No,
impeachment
I don't
inquiry?
do that. I don't think he'd do that. I mean, he wouldn't do it based on me, no.
Did you
Not at-
talk to your Republican allies on Capitol Hill and say you should support this?
No, I
impeachment
don't have to
inquiry?
talk. They're more proactive than I am. They think it's terrible.
She
I will
is-
say this. They think I was treated very
She's a
unfairly.
giant.
I mean, when I was impeached for a perfect phone call, and now it turned out to be perfect, I hope you will admit that at least, because I was right, 100% right. But I was impeached for a perfect phone call. And how sad that is.
Yeah,
And
fuck you, Vindman.
we had 196 to nothing
Maggot.
vote for Republicans. Very unusual for the Republican Party. I was so proud of them. 196, the entire House, not one person dissented. And then other than Romney, who sort of gave me half a vote, but we had 100%
What up,
in the
Yeti?
Senate. People think I was treated very unfairly.
Well, the people who
And I
voted
know I was
the
treated
people who
very
voted for that impeachment say that the phone call that you referenced was about a quid pro quo.
It was perfect.
But
my phone call was perfect. My phone call was saying,
all
please
recorded.
investigate any crimes that you see. And by the way, I'm mandated to do that as the President of the United States. And it was really a call to congratulate him on winning the election. But,
Mr. President, let's...
No, when you talk about quid pro quo, please don't talk about quid pro quo, because there was none in the call at all. Where there's
That
a
was
quid
the
pro,
heart of what
where
I'm
there
saying
is
is
a
that was the
quid
heart
pro
of
quo
that impeachment.
was when Biden said very strongly, we're not going to give them the $1 billion unless they get rid of the prosecutor.
That was going
That's
after
a
his
quid
son.
pro quo.
Mr. President, let me take a step back here, because a lot of voters say what they want to talk about right now is your vision for the future.
Sure.
And I've been traveling to a lot of the early voting states, and they say that your focus on the past is a problem for them. What do you say to those voters?
I have no focus on the past, except that you have to learn from history. You have to learn from
I
the
feel like
past.
people that were focusing on the past is liberal media, because what do they always keep bringing up? Well, January 6th is an insurrection. Show me one person that was charged and convicted of insurrection. Or just charged.
We had an election that was very, very terrible. It was a terrible thing for our country. And you have to learn from that. You can't forget that and just go. Now, with all of the things that we said, I had the best economy maybe in history.
We're going to talk about it next.
Right.
So let's stay
I
on
had the
track
best
with it.
economy in history, and I'm going to do it again. I had the best
course.
energy. We were energy independent, soon to be energy dominant. Now we're begging for energy. I mean, what they've done to this country, they're destroying our country.
We're going to talk about the economy in just a minute. But before we move on from Capitol Hill, do you think Republican hardliners should abandon their threat to shut down the government over their spending priorities now that there is this impeachment?
No, I think
inquiry?
if they don't get
Yeah.
a fair deal,
Oh,
we have to
speaking of
save our
budget.
country. We have 35.
They voted on, I believe, $864 billion for the U.S. military. Seems in a way that, well, they haven't passed a budget or a inspection in years. However, one of the things I did read, it includes a massive pay raise to lower enlisted. That's fucking awesome, because you don't get that. And I get a 2% raise.
$5 trillion in debt. We have to save our
So
country.
you would shut
there's-
down the government? You'd support that?
I'd shut down the government if they can't make an appropriate deal. Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about the economy. And I want to start by talking about this big standoff between the auto workers and the big three auto manufacturers. My question for you, Mr. President, whose side are you on in this?
I'm on the side of making our country great. The auto workers are not going to have any jobs when you come right down to it, because if you take a look at what they're doing with electric cars are going to be made in China. The auto workers are not going to have any. I'll tell you what, the auto workers are being sold down the river by their leadership, and their leadership should endorse Trump. The reason is you got to have choice. Like in school, I want school choice.
If Ford got bailouts from the U.S. government, I remember. And I can tell you why Ford didn't get bailed out, but they did, because they got huge contracts to make vehicles for our partners overseas. And I'm talking about armored F-350s.
Also want choice for cars. If somebody wants gasoline, if somebody wants all electric, they can do whatever they want. But they're destroying the consumer, and they're destroying the auto workers. The auto workers will not have any jobs, Kristen, because all of these cars are going to be made in China. The electric cars automatically are going to be made in China.
So let's talk about UAW's leadership. The president, Sean Fain, has withheld his endorsement of President Biden. But this is what he had to say about you.
Well, he didn't endorse anybody.
Another Donald Trump presidency would be a disaster. How would you win that endorsement?
Well, if that's the case, I probably won't win his. I don't know the gentleman, but I know his name very well. And I think he's not doing a good job in representing his union, because he's not going to have a union in 3 years from now. Those jobs are all going to be gone because all of those electric cars are going to be made in China. That's what's happening. Number one. Number two, the electric cars are much more expensive, and they don't go far enough. So if somebody wants to take a little bit of a long, just like the trucks, if somebody wants to take a little bit of a long ride, let's go to Maine, or let's go to Kentucky from New York. You can't do it. I mean, you have to stop all the time.
Drive.
They don't go far enough. They're very expensive. They have a lot of drawbacks. Now, with that being said, some people are going to want them. Some people are going to travel short distances. What they're doing with our trucking industry is a disaster, because they want all electric trucks. And a truck on with a large tank, large gasoline or diesel capacity, can go up to 2,000 miles. An electric truck goes 300 miles. So what are these guys going to do? They're going to stop every 300 miles and recharge their truck and spend 3 hours?
I was going to say, how long does it take to fully charge a vehicle, especially if you go it to the max?
And talk about
and there's not that many vehicle starts around.
Issue when it comes to the economy, the issue of interest rates, inflation, something that you've talked a lot about.
Yeah.
The Federal Reserve is obviously independent, but I wonder, Mr. President, if you are re-elected, would you direct your Federal Reserve chair to lower interest rates?
Well, you know that I put a lot of pressure on him. It was outside pressure, because nobody knows whether or not you can really do that, but I did, because I thought his interest rates were too high, and he ultimately dropped his interest rates. The same gentleman, as you know. But it was a lot of pressure. I mean, I was very active on that. Right now, interest rates are very high. They're too high. People can't buy homes. They can't do anything. I mean, they can't borrow money. The banks don't have the money. The banks aren't lending the monies. The banks, by the way, Chase Manhattan Bank, Bank of America, they discriminate against conservatives. It's a disgrace, and they shouldn't be allowed to. And I'm going to do something about that. But you take a look at banks throughout the country, and I think because of the regulators, but you take a look at Bank of America and Chase, they discriminate against conservatives and Republicans.
What's the evidence for that, Mr. President?
Oh, we'll give you plenty of evidence.
Okay, all right. Well, let's stay on track with this question, though. So just to be very clear, if you were reelected, would you direct your Fed chair to lower interest rates?
Depends. It depends.
You might.
Depends
We're
where
not in
inflation
charge of the
is.
Federal
I
Reserve.
would get inflation down, because drill we must. We will be drilling for oil. We are going to become, again, energy independent. We are going to reduce our debt, because we're also going to become energy dominant. You know, we were ready to go dominant within a matter of months. We would have been making so much money. We have more oil, I call it liquid gold, under our feet than any other country, Saudi Arabia, Russia. And there's no country with more, and it's sweet. It's the finest. We have the best. You know, we're taking it from Venezuela. You know what it is? Tar. It's the worst.
Mr. President, are you going to appoint a new Fed chair if you're reelected?
Well, I guess he would have 2 years left or something like that, so we'll see. But,
okay. All right.
you know the word jawboning? I did a lot of jawboning against him. And he ultimately lowered interest rates.
Did you
We had
say
low interest
jawboning?
rates. We had the best housing market ever. We had people buying homes. Today, people can't buy homes.
Economists are looking at some
Interest rates
figures
for houses
right
are
now.
stupid
The
right
fact
now.
that the unemployment rate is at 3.8%. And they say it looks like the U.S. may not dip into a recession. What do you make of that assessment?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, people are going to, they say that, and then you end up in a depression. They say you're going to do great. You end up bad. You say,
Well, they
and
did
the
change
opposite. Most of them don't know what they're doing. It's a touch, it's a feel. And I predicted a lot of markets. I predicted a lot of things, frankly. You know, they say Trump was right about everything. I think that the way it's going now, you're going to have to, things are not going right now very well for the consumer. Bacon is up 5 times. Food is up horribly.
Yeah. I love me some fucking bacon. But shit, I haven't had any in a while, and I don't go grocery shopping, and now I know why. Fuck.
Worse than energy. Energy is starting to go up at a level that we haven't seen in a long time.
My electric
A
finally
couple of
going back
years since
down
he
to
took
low.
over, because I had energy prices very low. I had gasoline very low. We have to get the energy down, which they will never do. And they kept it artificial because they took the strategic reserves, which I had a lot to do with filling up for the first time ever. They took these strategic reserves and he issued it to everybody so that he could keep the gas prices down. Now, strategic reserves are at the lowest level they've ever been at, and we need that for war.
And there are a lot of factors that have contributed to that.
Well, no, the big factor is the fact that he took that oil.
Let's talk about taxes.
He took that and he wanted to have low gas prices for an election. And now we have nothing left.
Mr. President, there are a lot of factors, including global factors, that went into that. Let's talk about taxes, though.
I don't know why people stick up for him so much when he makes bad decisions like you. I don't know why, and I have a lot of respect for you, and you were very fair in the debate. But I don't know why you and other people say, oh, it's okay that he destroyed the strategic petroleum reserves. I mean, why do you do that? Or it's okay that he has open borders. Somebody was in your position, not quite as good, said this morning, oh, having open borders is a wonderful thing. I don't know why, and I think that's why the media has lost so much
Mr.
credibility.
President, we're just having a conversation. Let me talk to you about taxes and your differences with President Biden over taxes.
Sure.
He wants to raise corporate tax rates to 28%. It's reported you want to lower them to 15%. Is that true?
I'd like to lower them a little bit if we could, but what I want to do is we have to get some income coming in. You know, when I lowered taxes, we took in more revenue.
To 15%, Mr.
You know
President?
that when it depends on where we are at the time. You know, a lot happens in a year. But when I lowered taxes, I cut taxes tremendously, created tremendous jobs. But more importantly, we had more revenue with lower taxes than we did with higher taxes.
You also added $8 trillion to the national debt. Your GOP challenger, Nikki Haley, made that point, saying, quote, the truth is that Biden didn't do this to us. Republicans did this to us. Does she have a point?
We had a thing happen to us. We had the greatest economy in history, and then we got hit with COVID. And we had to keep this beautiful thing going. And if I didn't do that, if we didn't put some money in, nobody knew what COVID was. Remember, this was a new thing that came in. Somebody said it's dust coming in from China. It came from China. They tried and denied it, or they tried for a little while, and we didn't let it. It came from Wuhan, actually, which now they agree. Everybody's now agreeing that it came from Wuhan. I said that years ago. But we had to do things that were very severe. We had to let some money come out. We were on the verge of doing something that was amazing. We were going to have energy at a level bigger than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined. That energy was going to be sold to Europe and all other places. The prices would have come down. We were going to make a fortune, and we were going to start paying off debt. Instead, we got hit with COVID. People didn't need oil because nobody was driving all over the world. I mean, frankly, it was a disaster. What China did to the world with COVID is something that we're going to get to the bottom of, and they have to pay something back. You know, nobody can pay back the cost of all those lives and all the money that was lost, but nobody can pay back the lives and all of the damage that was caused, including China. But you know what? They have to pay something back.
To Nikki Haley's key argument, though. What do you say to her?
What does Nikki Haley know? I mean, I know Nikki Haley very well. She said, I'm the greatest president. She left, she said, I'm the greatest president. Now she's running for office and she says something. Look, Nikki Haley doesn't know anything about it. She's a politician. She knows nothing about it. very nice woman. Some people like that, I would say. But she left office. She said very strongly, I will never run. He was a great president. And then in some cases said the greatest president in my lifetime. In one case said the greatest president ever. Now she's running. Nikki Haley has nothing to do with this. We were going to make a fortune off our energy. We were going to send the energy to Europe. Europe was going to pay us tremendous amounts of money.
They did.
And I'll tell you, you would have never had the Ukraine monster at all. It would have never happened. Russia would have never got, just by sheer force of personality. But beyond personality, what happened is when oil hit $100 a barrel, and by the way, it's right there right now again, Putin makes a fortune on this war. You know, everybody said, oh, he can't afford it. If Biden allowed my policies to stay in place, oil would right now be at $40 a barrel, and Putin wouldn't be able to afford the war.
We are going to get to the war in Ukraine, but first I do want to talk about the issue of abortion, which is important to a lot of voters all across the country. Just this week, women in Idaho and Tennessee, I don't know if you saw this, filed suit against their state saying their lives were put at risk after they were denied abortion services because their state's restrictive laws put in place after Roe was overturned. So my question for you, Mr. President, is how is it acceptable in America that women's lives are at risk, doctors are being forced to turn away patients in need?
So these cases that they're saying they're being turned away, this snap, it's like, oh, you can't have an abortion. Bro, the people that are required to have abortion, not required. State of Tennessee, we have limitations. And rape and incest is one of them. You can't just, and the health of the mother, like legit health with a, what's the wordable, non-viable baby. Well, it's not viable, but still it's a baby. So I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. And that news in Tennessee lasted all about 3-4 days. That's it.
Or risk breaking the law?
Ready? A little bit of a long answer. I hope you have time.
I hope you have time. Okay. I'm here for as long as you have.
Roe v. Wade. For 52 years, people, including Democrats, wanted it to go back to states so that states could make the right. Roe v. Wade, I did something that nobody thought was possible, and Roe v. Wade was terminated, was put back to the states. Now, people, pro-lifers, have the right to negotiate for the first time. They had no rights at all. Because the radical people on this are really the people, the Democrats, that say after 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, and even after birth, you're allowed to terminate the baby.
Democrats aren't saying that. I just have to. Democrats are not saying that.
Of course
That's
they do.
not true.
You have a Virginia governor, previous governor, who said after the baby is born, you will make a determination, and if you want, you will kill that baby. The baby is now born.
Democrats writ large are not talking about that. Only 1% of late-term abortions happen always in the state of
They are the radical people because nobody wants to see abortion after 5 months and 6 months and 7 months. And now it gave people that believe in pro-life, look, just so you understand, it's pretty much 50-50. It's a 50-50 issue. Amazing. If you look at the charts, it's been 49, 51. It's been like that for many years. Goes both ways. 51, both ways. Ready? I was able to do something which gave at least pro-life people a voice. Now it's going to work out. Now the number of months will be determined. And you're going to have something where everybody comes together.
Does it bother you, though, that women say their lives are being put at risk? Do you feel you bear any responsibility?
I don't think
because
they
as
are,
you say, you are responsible.
What's going to happen is an issue that's been going on for a long time, and it's a very polarizing issue.
Hey, you think about it. It ruins their lives. If they get them, it's not physically, it's socially. Look, Casey Anthony. They look at him like a burden, so why have it? Right? I can open my legs. Well, that sounded bad because I'm the one that inserts. I don't know.
Because of what's been done and because of the fact we brought it back to the states, we're going to have people come together on this issue. They're going to determine the time because nobody wants to see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Nobody wants to see abortions when you have a baby in the womb, I said with Hillary Clinton when we had the debate, I made a statement, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month. You're allowed to do that, and you shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Again, no one is
again,
arguing
listen,
for that. That's
look,
not a part of anyone's platform, Mr.
The
President.
Democrats are able to kill the baby after birth.
Let me talk to you.
Nobody wants that.
Democrats don't want that.
So
either.
we're
But
going to come
I
together.
want to know what you want. I want to know what you're going to do if you're
We
reelected.
are going to
Would
come.
you
Oh,
sign
absolutely,
federal
Eddie,
legislation
100%.
that would ban abortion at 15 weeks?
No, let me just tell you what I do. I'm going to come together with all groups, and we're going to have something that's acceptable. Right now, to my way of thinking, the Democrats are the radicals, because after 4 and 5 and 6 months, but you have to say this, after birth. You have New York State and other places that pass legislation where you're allowed to kill the baby after birth.
Mr. President, I want to give voters who are going to be weighing in on this election a very clear sense of where you stand on this.
I think they're all going to like me. I think both sides are going to like me.
What's
going to have to happen is you're going to have to, listen, you're asking me a question. What's going to happen is you're going to come up with a number of weeks or months. You're going to come up with a number that's going to make people happy, because 92% of the Democrats don't want to see abortion after a certain period of time.
Sometimes people age.
A federal ban landed on your desk if you were reelected. Would you sign it at 15
weeks? Are you talking about a complete ban?
A ban at 15 weeks.
Well, people are starting to think of 15 weeks. That seems.
I mean, I'd smash. But as long as she doesn't have a baby, we're good. But I'd smash.
To be a number that people are talking about right now.
Would you sign that?
I would sit down with both sides and I'd negotiate something, and we'll end up with peace on that issue for the first time in 52 years. I'm not going to say I would or I wouldn't. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that
I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. But we'll come up with a number. But at the same time, Democrats won't be able to go out in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months and allow an abortion. And, Kristen, you have to look at this, because you said no. You have some states that are allowed to kill the child after birth, and you can't allow that.
But, Mr. President, again, no one is calling for a child to be killed after birth. No one's calling for that.
But you have legislation.
But let me just ask you.
Kristen, you have legislation in certain states where it's allowed.
Mr. President.
The governor of Virginia, previous governor, who was a whack job. I call him the Michael Jackson governor.
No one's talking about that governor, as part of their platform. I want to know what
that governor said you can kill the baby after birth.
But, Mr. President, this is about what you would do if you were reelected. As you know, you upset
We will agree to a number of weeks, which will be where both sides will be happy. We have to bring the country together on this issue.
Mr. President, when you talk about negotiating, I think a lot of people think to themselves,
So if he gets with the governors and they come up with a plan, that's not leaving it up to the states, because you're putting a limit. So you kind of are putting a ban on it, if you really think about it.
This is an issue that they care about deeply in their hearts. They know where they stand, and they want to know where you stand. As you know, some anti-abortion groups are really looking for some clarity from you. So let me just ask you to put a fine point on this. Should the federal government impose any abortion restrictions, or should it be completely left up to the states?
No, I don't think you should be allowed to have abortions well into a pregnancy.
But what about the question I just asked you?
No, we're going to agree to a number of weeks or months or however you want to define it. And both sides are going to come together, and both sides, and this is a big statement, both sides will come together, and for the first time in 52 years, you'll have an issue that we can put behind us.
At the federal level?
It could be state or it could be federal. I don't frankly care.
So you're not committed to a ban at the federal level?
I will say this. Everybody, including the great legal scholars, love the idea of Roe v. Wade terminated so it be brought back to the states.
It sounds like that's what you think, too, that it should remain a state issue.
I would say this. From a pure standpoint, from a legal standpoint, I think it's probably better, but I can live with it either way. It's much more important. The number of weeks is much more important. But something will happen with the number of weeks, the amount of time, after which you can't do it. And you know what? The most powerful people that are anti-abortion are okay with that now. And you know what? They weren't okay with that even a year ago.
Your former Vice President, Mike Pence, believes that a fetus should have constitutional rights. Do you believe that, Mr. President?
Well, Mike Pence said something about 15 weeks, too, which was a big change for Mike Pence because Mike Pence had no exceptions. I have exceptions, by the way. I think people should have exceptions. I think if it's rape or incest or the life of the mother, I think you have to have exceptions.
Does a fetus have constitutional rights, Mr. President?
And a lot of people, when they don't have exceptions. Now, I will tell you that I think most Republicans.
Obviously, if you look at neither side gives the fetus constitutional rights, but you do have the same states that are like, you know what, you killed a pregnant lady, and we're going to charge you with double murder. So maybe it does have constitutional rights, or who knows?
Are willing. You go life of the mother, rape, incest. I think most of them are there.
But should a fetus have constitutional rights, Mr. President?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what he's saying because before he wanted, you couldn't have abortion.
But what are you saying?
Now all of a sudden,
what do you think?
Excuse me. Now all of a sudden he's saying 15 weeks. I said, wow, where did that come from? That's a radical change. Look, something is going to happen that's going to be good for everybody, and that's what I'm almost like a mediator in this case. They wanted Roe v. Wade terminated because it was inappropriate. We got it done. Something's going to happen. It's going to be a number of weeks. Something's going to happen where both sides are going to be able to come together. And then we'll be able to go into other things like the economy, our military.
Are you saying a federal ban with exceptions? Is that what you're saying?
What I say is very simple, because you can't put words in my mouth like that. Because you've been hearing me talk about this issue, and I think talk about it very productively. It could be a state ban. It could be a federal ban. But Democrats want that, too. Democrats don't want to see abortion in the 7th month. Okay, I speak to a lot of Democrats. They want a number. There is a number, and there's a number that's going to be agreed to. And Republicans should go out and say the following, because I think the Republicans speak very inarticulately about this subject. I watched some of them without the exceptions, et cetera, et cetera. I said, other than certain parts of the country, you're not going to win on this issue. But you will win on this issue when you come up with the right number of weeks, because Democrats don't want to be radical on the issue. Most of them, some do. They don't want to be radical on the issue. They don't want to kill a baby in the 7th month or the 9th month or after birth. And they're allowed to do that, and you can't do that.
I have a very robust foreign policy section to get to. Okay. I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of your legal challenges. So if we could do that first, and then we'll move on.
Sure.
I don't like abortion by any means. I only believe in exceptions and a certain week, which is the first trimester. But when you leave it up to states' rights, but then you come back and say, oh, we're going to work together. We're not going to say it's a federal ban. We're just going to set limits. So technically, that's the federal government stepping in and making a federal ban. I don't like that.
To foreign policy, you are facing 4 indictments.
Biden indictments, excuse me. Biden political indictments. He said to the Attorney General,
he's had nothing to do with it.
He said to the Attorney General, indict him. They put in the New York DA case, which everybody admits isn't even a case.
That, Mr. President.
They're Biden
there's
indictments.
No proof of that.
You know what? He started something that's a very slippery slope. He said, I've got a guy that's beating me in the polls. I'm beating all the Republicans by a lot, and I'm beating him by a lot. I have somebody that's beating me in the polls. Indict him. And they, not only that, they took their top person in the Department of Justice and put him into the Manhattan DA's office. They're dealing with Fannie Willis all the time.
Mr. President, the Attorney General appointed a special counsel to investigate you, President Biden, and President Biden's son, Hunter, who was also indicted today. But I do want to move...
President Biden does not fall within the Presidential Records Act. And frankly, you don't ever hear anything about the special counsel. But they gave me this deranged person named Jack Smith. Yep. He's a deranged lunatic. I fall within the Presidential Records Act. It's very simple. It's a civil thing. In fact, the New York Times, of all institutions, did a story. And it was headlined, "Please, please, please,
That's awesome,
Mr. President, could we take a look at the documents?" And they said in the story that the only way you can get documents from a president is if you go there and say please, because this is civil. And they won't even have a lawsuit. They may have a civil lawsuit at most, but they probably don't even have a civil lawsuit. And this should never have been an indictment. There's no criminal. Now, there is criminal for Joe Biden because he was a senator and he was a vice president.
Well, the charges you're facing don't have anything to do with the Presidential Records Act. But let me ask my question so we can get to foreign policy.
Wait a minute. This comes within the Presidential Records Act. That's what it's about.
Let me just ask these questions, and then we can move on to some other topics. You are facing 4 indictments, 91 felony charges.
If you would say it properly, I'm facing 4 Biden indictments. He told the Justice Department to indict him, or Merrick Garland said, let's indict him.
Let me ask you this, Mr. President.
They indicted their political opponent.
I just want to hear from you on this. I want to know what's in your head. When you go to bed at night, do you worry about going to jail?
No, I don't, really. I don't even think about it. I'm built a little differently, I guess, because I have had people come up to me and say, how do you do it, sir? How do you do it? I don't even think about it. These are corrupt people that I'm dealing with. They're destroying our country. I don't even think about it. All I think about is making the country great, making America great. Look, these are political, these are Banana Republic indictments. These are third world indictments. The President of the United States sees how we're doing. We have a movement, the likes of which has never happened in this country before. And you see it with the polls. I mean, I'm up on these people by 60 points and 59 points. I don't mean I'm at 59. I'm leading them by 59. You almost say, like, why are they campaigning? Asa Hutchinson, he's at 0. Christie's at 2. Other ones are at 1. DeSanctimonious is at 9. I just see a poll coming. I mean, I'm leading him by 60 points.
Mr. President.
And you say, why are they doing it? But here's what they did. They saw this happening. And he went to the Attorney General of the United States, and he told them, indict Trump.
There's just no evidence of that, Mr.
Why?
President.
Because you mean he's
but let's stay on track.
Look at all the lies he's told.
Mr. President, I want to talk
Kristen,
about
wait a minute. Wait. Could I say one thing? Look at all the lies he's told over the last couple of weeks. He said he was at the World Trade Center, and he wasn't. He said he flew airplanes, right? He didn't. He said he drove trucks, and he didn't. Everything he says is like a lie. It's terrible.
Mr. President,
even his handicap in golf, he said he's a 6. He's not a 6.
I want to stay focused on you,
okay,
for the purposes of this interview, okay? Because it's important that we hear from you about all of this.
Well, I'd like you to, but you keep interrupting me.
Tell me, Mr. President, tell me what you see when you look at your mugshot.
I see somebody that loves this country in me, that loves this country. I see tremendous unfairness. I think very few people would have been able to handle what I handled. When I was coming down the escalator with Melania, I was already under investigation because they saw how well I was doing in the polls. And it just got worse and worse. And we caught them. We said they were spying on our campaign. It turned out to be true. They had the fake dossier. That turned out to be true. It was paid for by the Democrat Party. It was all fiction. All of these things happened. Impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2. I've been treated very badly, and I've won every single time. When you say, do I sleep? I sleep. I sleep because I truly feel that in the end, we're going to win. I think we're going to win an election the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. I don't think anything's going to stop it. Nothing's going to stop it. Because people see what's happened to our country. We're not respected in the world. Look at other countries. Look at what's happened. Everybody's going to the side of China, Russia, Saudi Arabia.
We're going to talk about that.
No,
Mr. President,
China
I want to delve into foreign
world.
policy, but let's get through this, and then I want to talk to you about all of those issues you just talked about, Mr. President. By the way, do you think your former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, is still loyal to you? He just pleaded not guilty in the Georgia
Well, I hope
case.
he's loyal to me. I mean,
do you worry about him flipping?
Wrong.
Do you worry
I didn't
about
do
him?
anything wrong.
Okay, let's talk about Georgia. I want to talk about that phone call that you made to Georgia's Secretary of State, a Republican, Brad Raffensperger.
That was even more perfect than my call to
Let's talk about it.
The president of Ukraine.
Okay.
It was a perfect call. Just before you start, many top legal scholars, almost everyone, but many top have analyzed that phone call. That was a phone call made in front of, I guess, 7 or 8 lawyers. Brad Raffensperger, the head, who, by the way, last week said, I didn't do anything wrong. He said that was a negotiation. Brad Raffensperger, who I was dealing with, I appreciate that he said that, but he said last week, I didn't do anything wrong.
Let's talk about it so we can move on. You said in the call.
Let me just tell you one other thing. When I spoke, I knew I was probably being taped. I didn't ask, but I knew I was probably being taped. You know, they illegally taped me because they taped me in Florida. It's a two-party state. You know that, right? So they illegally taped the call. But forget about that for a second. I knew that there were many lawyers on the phone from the other side. There were many people. There were many people on the phone. When I told them, I said the election was rigged. I said all sorts of things about the election,
and
which I believe it
wasn't.
100%.
They told you it wasn't.
No, I have all the facts. Look, I have all the facts. In one way, I looked for a trial because it was so dishonest, okay, so rigged, and such a dangerous thing for our country. We have to have borders, and we have to have fair elections. We have neither.
But I want to talk about the border. I want to talk about the border, but we have to get through this.
When I spoke in front of Brad Raffensperger, who again last week said I didn't do anything wrong.
Well, it sounded like you were asking for him to come up with 11,000 votes.
No, and you know that. You're terrible when you say this. You're off to a bad start because what I said was very simple. I got cheated in this election.
He told you
and
didn't.
All I need is like 11,000, whatever the number was.
Brad Raffensperger, who's a Republican, said you didn't get cheated.
Well, he said that, but we have to go and see. You know, there's some court cases out there. We want to go into Fulton County, and we want to see the real votes. And it's so hard.
He said they looked into it. The election had been certified 3 times.
I don't want them. I want to look into it. I would say that if we got access to the votes, which we're close to getting in court, as you know, if we got access to those votes, if we look in, you will find numbers that you wouldn't believe. More importantly, though, let me just say this.
I want to get through this, Mr. President.
Kristen, you have to just hear me out for 1 second.
Foreign policy section.
We had, you know, you say something and then you want to go into the next subject. We had many people in the line. When I said, I spoke for an hour. I knew that many people were in the line. I knew that it was I happen to be a really smart person. Who is going to be talking badly when I have lawyers and many other people on the line? Nobody's going to say something bad. But if it was bad, why didn't they say, sir, that was very inappropriate of you to say? Nobody said that. Nobody said, sir. It was only a long time after the call that somebody said, oh, maybe he said something wrong.
They said, sir, there's no evidence.
This is a hoax, just like Russia, just like Ukraine. There's a hoax. Let me tell you, I spoke to them on the phone, and it was left, I think, something to the effect, okay, we'll get together tomorrow. Nobody said, sir, you shouldn't speak. If I said something incorrect, one of the lawyers for the state of Georgia, which I love, one of those lawyers would have said, sir, you'll have to take that back. That's an inappropriate statement.
The Republican Secretary of State said there was no evidence to fraud. He said he'd looked into it. The election had been certified 3 times when you made that call.
You're talking about a different subject. If I said something wrong on the call, he or one of his many lawyers that were on the call would have said, it's inappropriate what you just said. Nobody said that. We had a normal phone call.
They said there's no evidence of fraud.
He also said, I did nothing wrong last week.
Do you have any regrets about that call?
No.
Whatsoever?
None whatsoever.
Okay.
I called to complain about an election.
Okay.
And I have every right to do that. Do you think I have a right to complain about an election?
You have a right to take your case to court, which you did 60 times?
No, I didn't do 60 times. They wouldn't hear it based on all sorts of crazy, they wouldn't hear. We never got a trial. Judges would look at stuff and say, I'm not getting involved. They didn't want to get involved.
Let's keep moving so we get through.
If you take a look at the evidence, we have so much evidence. If you take a look at the evidence, even you I could convince.
You were going to hold that press conference, but you never did with the evidence.
No, because I'm using it in my court case instead.
Okay. I want to ask you about the case related to Mar-a-Lago. A new charge suggests you asked a staffer to delete security camera footage so it wouldn't get into the hands of investigators. Did you do that? It's false.
But let me tell you what.
Would you testify to that under oath?
I'll testify.
You testify to that under oath?
It's a fake charge by this deranged lunatic prosecutor who lost in the Supreme Court 9-0, and he tried to destroy lots of lives. He's a lunatic. So
we don't do ditto here. We're not dead people yet. We're not ghosts. I'm not Patrick Swayze. You're not Demi Moore. You want to go work with some clay, though? You know.
It's a fake charge. But more importantly, the tapes weren't deleted. In other words, there was nothing done to them. And they were my tapes. I could have fought them. I didn't even have to give them the tapes, I don't think. I think I would have won in court. When they asked for the tapes, I said, sure, they're my tapes. I could have fought them. I didn't even have to give them. Just so you understand, though, we didn't delete anything. Nothing was deleted.
So that's false. The people who testified.
Well, number one, the statement is false. Much more importantly, when the tapes came, and everybody says this, they weren't deleted. We gave them 100%.
Okay.
And just so you know, I offered them. I said, if you want to look at tapes, you can look at them.
Let's move on to January 6th and the allegations that you tried to subvert the election. And again, I just want to give you a chance to talk about this because voters want to hear about this. The most senior lawyers in your own administration and on your campaign told you that after you'd lost more than 60 legal challenges, that it was over. Why did you ignore them and decide to listen to a new outside group?
Because I didn't respect them.
You'd hired
lawyers,
them.
Sure, but that doesn't mean, you hire them. You never met these people. You get a recommendation. They turn out to be rhinos or they turn out to be not so good. In many cases, I didn't respect them. But I did respect others. I respected many others that said the election was rigged. Look, we have many people, and it's my choice. I happen to know that the election was rigged. Okay, I know it because I have there's so much proof of ballot stuffing. It's amazing.
Yeah, people have been
right just a little while ago, in terms of the modern history, where the 51 intelligence agents said very specifically they lied. They all lied. And they said about the laptop that it was Russia disinformation. That was a lie. That had a huge impact on the election. In fact, the pollsters say over 10 points. I didn't need 10 points. I needed 1/10 of a point. If you take a look at the Twitter files with the FBI and Twitter dealing, that had a huge impact on the election. Just those things. But in addition to that, you have ballot stuffing, you have a lot of
When you say you needed 1/10 of a point, you needed 1/10 of a point
I needed a very small.
To win?
I think somebody said 22,000 votes.
To win?
Yeah. If you divide it among the states, it was 22,000 votes, something to that effect. Yeah.
To win the election?
Yeah, if I would have had another 22,000 votes over the whole. But look, they rigged the election. If you look at Pennsylvania,
but Mr. President, you're saying you needed more votes to win the election. Are you acknowledging you didn't win?
If you look at all of the statistics, all of the votes, they say 22,000 votes, over millions and millions of votes, 22,000 votes. So when they do Twitter files, or when they have 51 intelligence agents come out and lie that the laptop from hell was Russia disinformation, and now they find out it's not. But they knew that at the time. They cheated on the election in that way, too.
I just want to be clear, though. Are you saying you needed those votes?
Relax, Dominic. Relax. It's because you're Hispanic.
In order to win, are you acknowledging you didn't win?
YouTube thinks you're probably going to get
not acknowledging. No, I say I won the election.
Okay.
Yeah, YouTube.
Even though, again, your lawyers told you you did not.
No.
Did you? Just let me understand.
Some people told me that, but many people told me the opposite.
You called some of your outside lawyers. You said they had crazy theories. Why were you listening to them? Were you listening to them because they were telling you what you wanted to hear?
You know who I listened to myself? I saw what happened. I watched that election, and I thought the election was over at 10 o'clock in the evening.
You were listening to your instincts.
My instincts are a big part of it. That's been the thing that's gotten me to where I am, my instincts. But I also listen to people. There are many lawyers. I could give you many books. There are books that are written on how the election was rigged. There are numerous books that were written on how the election was rigged.
Just to be clear, were you listening to your lawyer's advice or were you listening to your own instincts?
Bro, let me tell you what. When you have 2 adults and a 16-year-old, Christmas shopping is so much fucking easier.
I was listening to different people, and when I added it all up, the election was rigged. There are books
that are written. Were you calling the shots, though?
In fact, Molly Hemingway wrote a great book.
But were you calling the shots, ultimately?
Excuse me. Molly Hemingway, who's highly respected and great, she wrote a book, a best-selling book called Rigged.
Were you calling the shots, though, Mr. President, ultimately?
As to whether or not I believed it was rigged, oh, sure. It was my decision, but I listened to some people. Some people said that. Like guys like Bill Barr, he was a stiff, but he wasn't there at the time. But he didn't do his job because he was afraid. You know what he was afraid of? He was afraid of being impeached. He was petrified to be impeached. And how do you not get impeached? Don't do anything.
We've heard so much, Mr. President, about that day, the actual day of January 6th, from other people. Yeah. But quite frankly, we haven't heard from you about your own perceptions of how that day unfolded. You talked
No
about,
court case,
heard you
right?
talk about the rally, and I'm curious about what happened when you got back to the White House. I know you spent most of the day in the dining room. What were you doing in there? How were you watching it unfold?
So let me just tell you about January 6th. First of all, I had very little to do with January 6th. I was asked to speak. And I was the President of the United States. I'm allowed to do that. But I was asked to speak. Other groups, I think it was women's groups, a lot of people were involved in that. And it was incredible. It was incredible. It was, I think, the largest group I've ever spoken. You never see that. You never see pictures of the group that I was speaking to. I think it was the most people and I've spoken to some very large groups. Hundreds of thousands of people were there, and it was a beautiful, beautiful sight. But just so you understand, I went and I spoke. And by the way, peacefully and patriotically, and all of that which wasn't reported, but when I spoke...
Or, hear me out, go down to Mexico, walk across the border, say no papers, and they'll give you $10,000.
I have had senators go up. They said, I've never heard you speak so moderately. You were very moderate.
What happened when you got to back to the White House?
Well, wait, let me just say. So I spoke. And then I went back. I wanted to go down peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol. The Secret Service, who I have great respect for, said, sir, it's better if you don't do that. It could be unsafe. Because they didn't mean because of riots, because, it takes one guy with bad intentions, okay? So I didn't have a dispute with them. You had that one person said, I grabbed the man around the neck. Actually, I wish I was so strong to be able to do that. These are all tough guys, smart guys.
To dispute that account.
Dispute it? Who wouldn't dispute it? She's the craziest account I've ever heard. You mean that I was in the Beast, and she said I was in the Beast, and the Secret Service didn't win. So I took a guy who was like a black belt in karate and grabbed his neck and tried to choke him.
What happened?
How ridiculous. Just so you understand. And I have great respect for Secret Service, by the way. They're fantastic. The Secret Service said, sir, it would be better if you did. And I said, I'd love to do it. They said it would be better until we went back to the White House. Just so you understand, I spoke. I made a very nice speech. I wasn't Maxine Waters that calls for people's death and some of these. Take a look at what these other people say.
What happened
it's so
when you
ridiculous.
got to the White House, though? Where did you watch all of the events unfold?
Much more importantly, I offered 2 days before, 3 days before.
The fuck doesn't matter what he was doing when it happened, who was there and how he watched. It happened. It's over.
10,000 soldiers, right? And they were going to go because everybody was telling me, I knew it was going to be big in terms of the crowd, because everybody I spoke to said, hey, I'm going down on January 6th. I'm going down. I'm going to listen to your speech, etc. And there are other speakers. I wasn't the only speaker. There were many speakers. But wait a minute. I offered 10,000 people to the mayor of Washington, D.C., Nancy Pelosi, both of them, Nancy Pelosi, and to the mayor of Washington, and they turned it down flat. And the police commissioner was very nasty about it to her, and he testified. And here's what happened. The January 6th unselect committee of thugs and horrible people, the unselect committee destroyed all the evidence.
They say they didn't do that. We did ask them. We did ask the January 6th committee.
Well, they announced that they destroyed and deleted most of the evidence.
They say some of the evidence is still under review. I want to know what. I want to know about your perspective, Mr. President.
Kristen,
I want to
they put out an announcement that they destroyed the evidence, and they destroyed all the stuff having to do with Nancy Pelosi, and they wouldn't let her testify. We said, why isn't she testifying? It was a whole rigged deal. Why isn't she testifying? I offered them 10,000 soldiers. She turned them.
I want to know what
that
you
she's in
did on
charge of
that
security.
day. I want to know. You're the President of the United States, though.
She's in charge of
Tell me how you watched this all unfold. Were you in the dining room watching TV?
I'm not going to tell you. I'll tell people later at an appropriate time. Just so you understand, however.
What did you do when the Capitol was under attack, though?
Let me just tell you.
In the moment that the Capitol was
under attack. Did you see the statements I made in the Oval Office and just outside of the Oval Office?
Absolutely. I was there that day.
Our police are great. We love our police. We love everybody. Go home.
This was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, more than
I don't know,
3 hours after the attack started.
But there were tweets that were put out before that.
I want to know who you called
By the way,
on that day.
Nancy Pelosi. I don't have. Why would I tell you that? Listen, Nancy Pelosi was in charge of security. She turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't turn down the soldiers, you wouldn't have had January 6th.
Did you call military or law enforcement?
What?
Did you call military or law enforcement at the moment the Capitol was under attack?
I'm not going to tell you anything. let me put it this
That
way.
was on the mayor.
I behaved so well. I did such a good job. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 soldiers. If she didn't do that,
But
and now
Nancy
I understand.
Pelosi doesn't have the
I
authority
understand
that
the
you
police
have as
testified
commander-in-chief, though.
Listen to me, Kristen. Listen to me. I understand that the police testified against her, the chief very strongly against her, Capitol Police, great people. They testified against her, and they burned all the evidence. Okay, they burned all the evidence. They destroyed all the evidence about Nancy Pelosi.
What do you say to people who wonder why you as commander-in-chief, you have authorities that Nancy Pelosi doesn't have as commander-in-chief?
No, she has authority over
Why
the
didn't
Capitol.
you send help in that moment, though?
Frankly, just so you understand, I assumed that she took care of it. She turned down.
So when you realized that the National Guard wasn't coming?
Well, you don't realize anything until quite a while. National Guard not coming. I asked it to be there 3 days in advance, and she turned it down.
She says that request was never officially made.
Oh,
just
stop
so
it.
you know.
Let me just tell you.
Let me ask you
The
about
mayor of
pardons,
let me
Mr.
tell you.
President.
The mayor of D.C. gave us a letter saying that she turns it down. Okay, we have it. Nancy Pelosi also was asked, and she turned it down. The police commissioner
I'm talking
of
about the
Capitol
day of,
Police.
though.
Wait a minute.
Yep.
Capitol Police said that he wanted it, and Nancy Pelosi wouldn't accept it. She's responsible for January 6th.
Mr. President.
Nancy Pelosi's responsible.
Mr.
And
President,
the
you're the
J6
president,
committee
though. You
refused to interview
You have
her.
authorities that no one else has as the commander-in-chief. Do you think you showed leadership on that day?
Yes, absolutely, I did.
Okay.
And I showed calm. Nancy Pelosi is responsible for the security, and she did a terrible job. And by the way, from what I understand, they burned all the evidence.
Okay. She says she never got an official request. They say they didn't, but that's what you're saying.
Really?
Let's talk about.
And her daughter taping her. Her daughter happened to be a documentary.
Let's talk about potential pardons.
Documentary worker just happened to be there taping her at the time.
Let's talk about potential pardons, because a lot of your supporters are wondering about that. Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio was sentenced to 22 years in jail. Now that you know what the sentence is, 22 years in jail. Will you give him a pardon? Will you give other Proud Boys a pardon?
I don't know him. I never met him. I never heard of him until I started reading this
Will
stuff.
you pardon him?
But I want to tell you, he and other people have been treated horribly. Antifa kills people, and those guys didn't even get tried in many cases.
There's no
They put these guys in jail for 17, 18, and 22 years. They didn't kill anybody. Some of them never even went into the Capitol. Some of them weren't even in D.C., and they got a 22 or a 17-year sentence. 16, 18,
More than 1,000
15,
people.
22. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Yeah, 1,000 people. How many people, let me ask you this. How many people were charged for destroying Portland? How many people were charged for burning down the police precinct and the courthouse?
Will you pardon him, though? Will you pardon him?
In Minneapolis. I'd certainly look at it. I'd look at that, and I'd look at all the other people that have suffered, the J6 people.
Mr. President, let me ask you one final question, then let's move on to foreign policy.
That didn't even go into the building have suffered gravely.
A lot of those 1,500 that Biden pardoned had shady business dealings and were in jail for a lot of time. But he's like, you know what? We're good. We're good. I got you.
And you have to say one system of justice, right? You take a look at what's gone on in Portland. They burned down the city. The city is in shambles to this day. The store owners don't even rebuild storefronts anymore. They put up 2x4s.
I want to move on to foreign policy, Mr. President.
But why do you do that? Why do you give me a horrible question and then you don't let me answer it? You're off to a bad start, I'm telling you.
Mr. President, I want to make sure we get to talk about foreign policy as well.
But I don't mind. I have all the time in the world.
You do? Okay.
What's up, Lark? How you doing, brother?
Why is it that the people, Antifa people, and very bad people that burned down Portland, burned down Minneapolis, burned down...
We're watching a flashback to a year ago.
...so much, New York City, what they did in New York City, and they were barely charged. And yet the people in Washington, in some cases, never even went into the building.
You get a picture?
They've been persecuted. They've been persecuted.
People who...
because I'm working on the drone story right now. Probably will do it Monday or Tuesday.
Who were charged in January 6th, some of them were charged with sedition. Some of them were charged for violating the Capitol.
But many of these people have been persecuted.
Your supporters?
What they've done to them. And they didn't do this to the people that burned down. You take a look at Portland. It's like a burned down hulk of a city, including the federal courthouse.
Mr. President,
No.
If you were reelected, would you pardon yourself?
I could have pardoned myself. Do you know what? I was given an option to pardon myself. I could have pardoned myself when I left. People said, would you like to pardon yourself? I had a couple of attorneys that said, you can do it if you want. I had some people that said it would look bad if you do it, because I think it would look terrible. I said, here's the story. These people are thugs, horrible people, fascists, Marxists, sick people. They've been after me from the day I came down the escalator with Melania. And I did a great job as president. People were acknowledged. Great economy, great jobs, great this, great that. Rebuilt the military, Space Force, everything. I could go on forever. Let me just tell you. I said the last thing I'd ever do is give myself a pardon. I could have given myself a pardon. Don't ask me about what I would do. I could have, the last day, I could have had a pardon done. That would have saved me all of these lawyers and all of these fake charges, these Biden indictments. They're all Biden.
I know this is a year ago. I wonder, since Biden is doing all these pardons, if he pardons himself, then we know what's up.
Indictments, political. They indicted. They want to arrest their political opponents. Only third world countries do that, banana republics. So, ready? I never said this to anybody. I was given the option. I could have done a pardon of myself. You know what I said? I have no interest in even thinking about it. I never even wanted to think about it. And I could have done it. And all of these questions you're asking me about the fake charges, you wouldn't be asking me, because it's a very powerful thing for a president. I was told by some people that these are sick lunatics that I'm dealing with. Give yourself a pardon. Your life will be a lot easier. I said, I would never give myself a pardon.
Even if you were reelected in this moment?
Well, I think it's very unlikely. What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. You mean because I challenged an election, they want to put me in jail? I challenged an election, but I challenged a crooked election.
So it's not
It
on
was
your
a rigged
radar
election.
right now.
I challenged
It
a
was a
rigged election.
constitutional right.
And now I'm going to win for a third time. And I just hope they have better vote counters.
Let's move on to foreign policy, Mr. President. I want to talk about the war in Ukraine. I want to big picture get a sense of how you see this conflict. Do you see the security of Ukraine as critical to the security of the United States?
Okay, let me talk about it without interruption. Right? Ukraine would have never happened if I were president. If this election weren't rigged, Ukraine would have never happened. You would have hundreds of thousands of people, including lots of soldiers, still living. The cities would be flourishing, or at least up. These are cities that can never be rebuilt again, certainly not the way they were. Magnificent buildings, all ripped down like a demolition site. It would have never happened for two reasons. Number one, and most importantly, Putin has a lot of respect
back to
for
the
me.
drones. I just remembered. The U.S. and Ukraine were saying that Russian were sending drones over to Ukraine to spy. But maybe it's the other way around, which I 100% believe, because it would help with Israel.
And he wouldn't have played games. And I told him, don't ever go in. And he would never have gone in. This was only after I left that this happened. Likewise, President Xi would never, ever be talking about Taiwan the way he's talking about it right now. And they didn't. They weren't talking about it. It was only after I left. He would have never gone in. Equally as importantly, oil prices would have been at $40 a barrel instead of $110 a barrel. So he wouldn't have been able to afford going in. He actually is the only nation that made money because oil has been driven up so high by stupid people like Biden. Biden is an incompetent man. And what happened is oil. In fact, you're going to hit a new high very soon.
Yeah,
again.
okay.
That
That's
means
probably
Russia,
one of the drones they're talking about, because people are saying they're about the size of a SUV.
Russia makes money from oil. Russia is going to make a lot of money. And because they're making a lot of money, there's no reason for them to settle other than humanitarian reasons.
I know
And
if you look at agricultural drones, they're massive and they can hold weapons, payloads, and shit like that. And if it's the farm, they can just spray chemicals into the air. Huh.
people are going to be so humanitarian. So Putin would have never gone in because oil was at $40 a barrel, and he wouldn't have been able to afford to have gone in. At $100 a barrel, he made a fortune. And that's one reason. The other reason he wouldn't have gone in is because I said, don't go in. Don't even think about it.
Just to that key question, though, Mr. President, do you think that our security, the United States security, is linked to Ukraine's security?
I think that Europe has to do more. We're in for $200 billion. They're in for $25 billion. And it affects them more than it affects us.
I don't know if y'all know, but a drone supposedly landed somewhere in New Jersey, and the FBI were quick to be on the scene.
Certainly affects them much more than it affects us.
So you do think that it's linked
I think
in
Europe
some
is taking
way.
advantage of a stupid president.
You've probably...
Look, Biden should say to them, you have to equalize, you have to catch up. You know, Europe is about the same size as our economy if you add them all up, add the countries up. It's about the same size. And Biden should say to them, like I did with NATO. You know, NATO, they all owed money. I said, get your money in. And we had over $430 billion put in almost immediately. And the head of NATO, Stoltenberg, Secretary General, nice guy, he said to me, most amazing thing I've ever done. And he said it publicly, too. He said, Bush would come in, make a speech and leave. Obama would come in, make a speech and leave. Trump came in and said, you guys aren't paying your bills.
Okay.
And I got him to pay. You know, they asked me something, which hasn't been reported, but the media knows it. We had a meeting of the 28 countries at that time, 28 countries. And they said to me, are you saying, sir, because I said you got to pay your bills, are you saying, sir, that you won't protect us against Russia if we don't pay? I said, sorry to tell you, that's what I'm saying. You know what happened?
Yeah.
They started sending us money and now he's never given credit for it, but you wouldn't even have a NATO if it wasn't.
I wonder what powers
Let me ask you, Mr.
But here's the
President,
thing,
about
the
your
European
strategy.
countries have to start paying their share because we are having to do with Ukraine.
Because there's talks about like other drones getting up close to these drones and the power just getting drained. And that's weird.
Because we're at 200 billion and they're at 20 or 25 billion. It's so unfair.
Let me ask you about your strategy, though, because you have said you want to end this war in 24 hours. You saw the meeting between Kim Jong-un and President Putin. Do you think that complicates your strategy if you were reelected to try to end this war in 24 hours?
It would have been easier if the war didn't start and you'd have hundreds of thousands of people living, most importantly. But it would have been a lot easier if it didn't. But I can get it done, and I can get it done quickly.
How do you do it?
There's another example. You talk about Kim Jong-un.
No, my question.
Talk about Kim Jong-un.
Like the marker lights the aircrafts have to have. Especially being that size.
I got along great with Kim Jong-un after the first month or two when we were sparring. But I got along great with him. We were in no danger. There was President Biden said, and he felt even now, and President Obama told me when we sat down. Obama told me, and Biden still to this day, except I don't think he knows he can't put two sentences together. But President Obama told me our biggest threat is from North Korea. We're going to end up in a war. We didn't end up with a war with North Korea. We were going to make a deal. I would say I would have had a deal made with North Korea shortly after the election, had the election not been rigged.
How do you end this war, though? Talking of deals, how do you end this war in 24 hours?
I can't tell you exactly, because if I did, people understand. If I tell you exactly, I lose all my bargaining chips. I mean, you can't really say exactly what you're going to do, but I would say certain things to Putin. I would say certain things to Zelensky, both of whom I get along. Don't forget, Zelensky did something that was very honorable. They asked him, it didn't stop these animals from impeaching me, but, you know, one of those things. They asked him, did Trump do anything wrong? He said, absolutely not. It was a very normal phone call. You can't say that about Biden's call, because Biden, what he did was horrible with the prosecutor. But he said something that was very...
It looks like Monday is going to be the day.
He could have grandstanded and said, oh, I felt threatened.
For research tomorrow.
He said that President Trump did absolutely nothing wrong on the phone call.
Some people hear you say you're going to end the war in 24 hours, and they worry that means President Putin is going to get to keep the territory he's unlawfully
I'd make a fair
claimed.
deal for everybody. Nope. I'd make
Doesn't mean that? Wouldn't be a win for Putin?
You know, that's something that could have been negotiated, because there were certain parts, Crimea and other parts of the country, that a lot of people expected could happen. You could have made a deal. So they could have made a deal where there's less territory right now than Russia's already taken, to be honest. And you could have made a deal where nobody was killed. They had a deal. They would have had a Ukraine country. Now nobody even knows if Ukraine is going to be totally taken over. I will say this. something's going on, and it's not good for Ukraine because the news is no longer reporting about the war. The fake news. They don't report about the war anymore. You don't find much reporting. That means that Ukraine's losing, okay? I see very little reporting from NBC, your network. I see very little reporting from NBC, ABC, from CBS, from anyone about the war. It used to be you'd go and you'd watch, even a couple of months ago, you'd watch all of this great strategy. The spring offensive never happened. Ukraine's spring offensive never happened because they were met with a wall of armaments and bombs.
President Putin's worried people are losing interest. President Zelensky's worried that people are losing interest in this war. As you're saying,
no, I'm
Mr.
just saying, I'm not seeing anything about the war anymore. To me, that means that
You're not.
Probably because the press is fake and very discredited. That would mean that, look, here's my attitude on the war. I just want people to stop being killed. You know, I was asked by that ridiculous CNN group during my town hall.
Any near, and I shouldn't ask this, anywhere near the wildfires area? Because I also have a theory on that because of radiation that came from San Diego.
Whose side are you on? I said, I'm on the side of people stop being killed. I don't want to see people killed. They're being killed by the thousands and thousands and thousands. And that's the side I'm on. I don't want, and you know what? People like that answer, to be honest. And I stay with that same answer. I want people to stop being killed.
I want to ask you about something President Putin said about you this week. I don't know if you've seen it. This was very recent. President Putin said, quote, "We surely hear that Mr. Trump says he will resolve all burning issues within several days, including the Ukrainian crisis. We cannot help but feel happy about it." What do you make of that? Do you welcome his support?
I like that he said that because that means what I'm saying is right. I would get him into a room, I'd get Zelensky into a room, then I'd bring them together and I'd have a deal worked out. I would get a deal worked out. It would have been a lot easier before it started. Essentially for 4 years, I kept them from doing anything because you know what? I will tell you this. I've never said this. Ukraine was the apple of his eye. I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. He would have never done it. But again, oil prices. He wouldn't have done it because of me, but oil prices.
In this war, are those biolabs still going to be operating and working there? Or are they going to be destroyed or repurposed?
The prices were so high that he had so much money. So he had all this money to prosecute the war. The one who drove up the prices was Biden.
Given that President Putin has bombed maternity wards, 20,000 kids kidnapped from Ukraine by Russia, mass graves. Yeah. Do you welcome his support, his all but endorsement?
Look, I had a very good relationship with him, and yet nobody was tougher on Russia than me. I stopped Nord Stream 2. You never heard of Nord Stream 2. That was the pipeline until I got involved. Yep. I said Nord Stream 2, people that were sophisticated, military people and political people, never heard of Nord Stream 2. I had it ended. The pipeline was dead. Biden came in and he approved it. There was nobody tougher than me with Russia. And yet I got along with Putin. Let me tell you, I got along with him really well. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. He's got 1,700 nuclear missiles, and so do we. But look, that's a good thing. Getting along is okay. But I got along through strength. And the war would have never happened. The war would have never happened. Now what's happened, it's so bad. The oil price is so high. It's hard to get it stopped. The oil price is so high. When he goes above $50 and $60 a barrel, he makes a lot of money on the war.
That's weird,
now,
though.
It's a humanitarian thing. It's a lot of different reasons. But I will get that war stopped very, very quickly.
I want to talk about another region that you talked about. Let's talk about another region you talked about, China. If you were to cut a deal between President Putin and President Zelensky, do you run the risk of emboldening China to invade Taiwan?
No, not at all. Because China, he's another one I got along to until we had the China virus come in. Once COVID came in, once it was like, I made a great trade deal with China, one of the greatest deals ever made for the farmers and for the manufacturers. $50 billion a year is a great deal. I don't even talk about it because once COVID came in, it was like, I didn't want to talk about anything. I was a much different person. What happened to this world, not our country, the whole world, what happened with COVID, And it just shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. What happened, what China did to the world was so bad. But I had a great relationship
Would you send
I had a
troops
great
to Taiwan?
relationship with President Xi, really great relationship. And he was going to stop fentanyl from coming in. He was going to do a lot of, he was going to criminalize it if you made it. You know, in China, they have a death penalty for drug dealers. He was going to make that with fentanyl dealers, too. But then the election didn't work out, and he never had to do that.
I know you've been asked this, but very quickly, if China were to invade Taiwan, have you made a determination, again, since voters are about to go to the polls,
If it hasn't happened in
would you
4 years,
send
it's
the
not
U.S.
going to happen.
military into Taiwan if President Xi were to invade? President Biden says he would.
I won't say, because if I said, I'm giving away, you know, only stupid people are going to give that answer. I heard the other day DeSanctimonious said something about he was going to do this or he was going to do that. I say, well, why is he saying the strategy? You can't say that. So when you ask me that question, I would never say that, because you give away all your options.
But you don't take it off the table.
I don't take anything off the table, no.
If elected, you say you would order the Defense Department to use special forces to inflict maximum damage
I didn't
on
say
drug
that.
cartels.
No. People said I said that.
Okay, what would you do?
I didn't say that.
What
I
would
wouldn't
you
tell
do?
you what I do. Why would I say that? Because, again, you don't want people to know your strategy. Now, people said they leaked and said things that I said this or I said that, or I was going to hit them with Patriot missiles, the drug dealers in Mexico. But I will say, and horribly, that they kill 250,000 people in the United States every year. You know, you never hear that number. You hear 100,000. I think it's much more. They destroy families, because when you lose a son or a daughter to fentanyl, or a wife or anybody else, but when you lose a son or daughter, your life is destroyed, their lives are destroyed. They've destroyed so many families. It comes from Mexico. Something's got to be done. If we were in war, we would lose 250,000 people. We're losing more people than you lose in just about any war that we've ever had, and we lose them on a yearly basis. Something has to be done, and it has to be done fairly quickly.
Ron DeSantis says he's in this race to finish the border wall. What do you say to that?
Well,
I
built 500 miles of border wall. It was great. It was just what as you know, the Border Control Board and everybody else, Border Patrol. I had them in my office. I wanted to we were going to do concrete plank, 40 feet high. They didn't want that. They wanted you see-through. They wanted to be steel, concrete, and rebar. I did everything. I gave them the wall that they wanted. You know, we tested it. We had mountain.
I don't know if you guys heard. I can't remember who the guy was from Texas, but Joe Biden is actually selling off all the border wall materials again. And the dude from Texas like, we'll buy it for $1 billion and we'll finish the wall. And I was like, dude, talk about getting your taxpayers' money back.
Climbers test the ones that's the wall we built. I built almost 500 miles of wall. We were then going to build another 200 miles of certain areas that all of a sudden people were coming into areas that they couldn't come into anymore. And we were all set to do that. It was all bought. And all Obama had to do, all Biden had to do, it could be Obama too, because a lot of people think he's calling the shot, so who knows. But all Biden had to do is go out and put it up. And he not only didn't put it up, he took it off the site and they put it in yards hundreds of miles away so that Texas and Arizona couldn't get it. I had the safest border in history. I had the best border in history. We had the lowest drug numbers for years and years and years, decades. We had the lowest drug numbers. We had the lowest human trafficking numbers. We had the least number of people coming across. All he had to do is go to the beach like he does all the time. If he went to the beach and didn't do anything, we'd have a great border right now.
Final question, Mr. President. You have met with prime ministers, kings, queens, dictators. You've seen it all. As you think about the possibility of a second term, do you still think that democracy is the most effective form of government?
I do, but it has to be a democracy that's fair. This democracy is, I don't consider us to have much of a democracy right now. They indict their political opponent. Free speech is shot because the press is very dishonest, I have to say. Even the way you fight me on simple questions like, you know, the border and this, you fight me so much. And I'm saying, why are you fighting me? Do you know, when I first ran, the approval rating of the media was very high. And now it's very low. It may be below Congress, which is pretty hard to believe. People understand what's going on. We need a media that's free and fair, and frankly, if they don't have that, it's very, very hard to straighten out our country.
Did you feel as president you had enough power, though? If you were reelected, would you try to find ways? For example, there's a report you're looking into firing potentially people within the federal government who aren't necessarily perceived to be loyal. Would you need more power? Do you?
Well, just so you understand, that's what the Democrats do, okay? They do it in spades.
Would you do that?
They do it at a level that you wouldn't believe. I mean, nobody's ever done. No, I wouldn't do that. I want great people, whether they're Republican or Democrat. I want great people. But I want people that love our country, not people that hate our country.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think that's good. I think we did. We did a lot.
Is there any scenario by which, because Ron DeSantis says if he were elected, he'd have 2 terms and you'd only have 1 more term. Is there any scenario by which you would seek a 3rd term in office?
No. Just so you understand, when DeSantis says that, that means he's not your man. He's not your man anyway because he's a very untalented guy, and he's proven that. He started out, everybody was talking to him. After I worked him over a little bit, he's gone down the tubes. I think he's going to end up being number 3 or 4. He just had a poll today. He was number 4. And by the way, the one that was number 2 was 59 points behind. So, you know, it's very interesting. But when somebody says 8 years, we need 8 years, no. In 6 months to a year, many of the problems, almost all of the problems that you and I have just spoken about will be solved. Anybody that says they need 8 years, you don't want that person.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really appreciate it.
Well, that was part 1 of Kristen Welker versus Trump. That was a year ago. And then after this short, bathroom music / whatever the fuck you want to call it break that Yeti's going to dislike because it's Tom McDonald song, I'll see you guys in a couple minutes. I got to take a piss and I got to pop my back.
President-elect Donald Trump,
okay.
Welcome back.
That didn't work the way it was supposed to. Fuck that up.
I think it's crazy I'm the one who they labeled as controversial, and Cardi B is the role model for 12-year-old girls. There's rappers pushing Xanax at the top of the billboard, but if I mention race in a song, I'm scared I'll get killed for it. It's backwards, it's getting exponentially dumb. It's more difficult to get a job than purchase a gun. Eminem used to gay bash and murder his mom, and now he doesn't want fans if they voted for Trump. We're ashamed to be American. You should probably love it, cause you have the right to hate it and not get stoned to death in public. As children we were taught how to walk and talk, but the system wants adults to sit down and shut up. Cancel culture runs the world now, the planet went crazy. Label everything we say as homophobic or racist. If you're white, then you're privileged, guilty by association. All our childhood heroes got Me Too'd or they're rapists. They never freed the slaves. They realized that they don't need to change. They gave us tiny screens, we think we free cause we can't see the cage. They knew that race war would be the game they need to play. For people to big teams, they use the media to feed the flame.
They so fake woke. Facts don't care about feelings. They know they won't tell me what to believe in. They so fake woke. Same old safe zones. They so fake woke. Facts don't care about your feelings.
I think it's crazy how these people screaming facts, but they fake woke. Hate their neighbor cause he wears a mask or he stays home. Has a daughter but his favorite artist said he slays hoes. Picks her up from school, music slaps on the way home. Censorship's an issue cause they choose what they erase. There's a difference between hate speech and speech that you hate. I think Black Lives Matter was the stupidest name, when the system's screwing everyone exactly the same. I just want to spend Thanksgiving Day with food and my family, without being accused of celebrating native casualties. We got so divided, it's black and white and political. Republicans are bigots, libtards if you're liberal. There's riots in our streets and it's just getting worse. Y'all screaming deep on the police, y'all are genius for sure. They're underfunded already, they're way too busy to work. Order food and call the cops, see what reaches you first. Segregation ended, that's a lie in itself. That was a strategy to make us think they were trying to help. They knew that racism was hot if they designed it to sell. We buy up every single box and divide us ourselves.
They so fake woke. Facts don't care about feelings. They know they won't tell me what to believe in. They so fake woke. Same old safe zones. They so fake woke. Facts don't care about your feelings.
We use violence to get peace and wonder why it isn't working. That's like sleeping with a football team to try and be a virgin. Politicians are for sale and someone always makes the purchase, but you and I cannot afford it. Our democracy is worthless. If a man has mental illness, call him crazy, say it silently.
Oh, tell you what, guys. fucking 42 years old. My back is probably about the same thing that a 90-year-old man would have. Uh, thanks a lot, Army. Constant neck and back pain. It's a great thing, especially when it's your entire fucking spine. And I don't know. Some people would say it's an 8 out of 10, but for me, it's so normal that it's like 3. And I'm about to fart. And that was pretty loud. No clipping that. So that was part 1 of Christian Welker versus Donald Trump. Like I said, that was a year ago. This fifth,
President-elect Donald.
this next one, it supposedly says uncut. Full interview, not uncut. And it was from 5 days ago. So, I mean, y'all ready for this? I mean, y'all watch part 1. What I want to see is hopefully some of the questions are asked a little different, because I want to see if his answers match what he said a year ago.
Donald Trump, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here. You are the first president since Grover Cleveland to win non-consecutive terms. Republicans now have control of the House and the Senate.
He looks
What
excited.
do you plan to accomplish in your first 100 days in office?
Well, we're going to do something with the border, and very strong, very powerful. That'll be our first signal, and a first signal to America that we're not playing games. We have people coming in by the millions, as you know, and a lot of people shouldn't be here. Most of them shouldn't be here, but we have jails being emptied into our country. We have mental institutions from all over the world being emptied into our country. So we'll be doing that. We're going to be extending within that period, or as soon as we can, the Trump tax cuts, because, you know, they're coming due and they're very substantial for people. And it would be very, I think it will anger a lot of people, frankly, if we don't get an extension of that. That's what led us to one of the greatest economies ever. And those two things are going to be very vital, very important. We're going to be focusing on crime in the cities, and we'll work with Democrat governors. Most of them are, as you know, if you look at the 25 worst places, they're just about all Democrat-controlled cities and states. And we're going to be working with Democrat governors and Democrat mayors. And I look forward to doing it, but we have to do something about crime, and mostly in our cities. And we're going to have a lot of other things. We'll be working on nominations. We're going to still be working on some nominations. I think they're going very well. We have, for the most part, I think they're going extremely well. It looks like Pete is doing well now. I mean, people were a little bit concerned. He's a young guy with a tremendous track record, actually. Went to Princeton and went to Harvard. He was a good student at both, but he loves the military, and I think people are starting to see it. So we'll be working on his nomination along with a lot of others.
We are going to delve into your nominations, but since you bring him up, do you still have confidence in Pete Hegseth?
Yes, I do. I really do. He's a very smart guy. I've known him through Fox, but I've known him for a long time. And he's basically a military guy. I mean, every time I talk to him, all he wants to talk about is the military. He's a military guy. I used to kid him about it. I didn't think we'd be in this position where he may be, hopefully will be Secretary of Defense. But every time I was with him,
Honestly,
he was,
like I said before, I
fighting
have
for
more
soldiers
faith in
where
somebody like Pete Hegseth than a fucking general who's been in that position for fucking ever. Well, 01 to 04, because there's no 05s anymore. Fuck that up. I totally skipped the 06. 07, 08, 09, and whatever. It's whatever. But at that point, when you get up past colonel, lieutenant colonel, you're a politician pretty much. And it's less about soldiers, more about you and your division and how you can make soldiers can make him look. Doesn't really fucking matter. But Pete was on the ground as a lieutenant. Pete was on the ground as a captain. Pete was on the ground as a major. Just like I was. Every deployment.
he said some soldier was unjustly put in prison because they were really doing what they were taught to do in some cases. So, yeah, I think he's going to do fine.
The fact that there are these allegations against him, misconduct, sexual misconduct, heavy drinking, the fact that he said to some senators reportedly he'll stop drinking if he gets this job.
He's a combat veteran. Which one doesn't?
No, I think that everybody has something that they can stop. Some people can stop eating. I'm lucky I'm not a drinker, but I can stop eating. And we all want to stop doing something. And if he said that, I mean, it's a nice thing to say. That's a good thing to say. But he's very respected. I can tell you, I know a lot of the people at Fox, they think he's fantastic. And the people that work with him,
find his soldiers.
They love him. So I think you're going to have somebody that's really terrific.
Nobody interviews the soldiers.
All he talked about with me, I said, you're not really a television guy, even though he did very well, as you know. You're really a military guy. He said, I'm all about the military. And I told him, so he's making a lot of money at Fox. They're doing very well. And I said, if for some reason you don't get this thing, you're not going to be able to go back. And all that money you're making, you can kiss it goodbye. He said, this is all about America. He didn't say, well, let me think about it. Let me discuss it. That's a very big, risky thing he's doing. When he goes and he says, I'm going to give up, millions of dollars in order to possibly become the Secretary of Defense. A lot of people would say it's a great position. It's probably almost no greater position, but a lot of people would say, I have to think about it. He said, I don't have to think about it.
All right, we're going to delve into your cabinet piece a little bit later, but I want to delve into one of your signature promises on the campaign trail, which was to end inflation, to lower prices. You are now proposing tariffs against the United States' three biggest trading partners. Economists of all stripes say that ultimately consumers pay the price of tariffs.
I don't believe
Can you guarantee American families won't pay more?
I can't guarantee anything.
Can't guarantee that, obviously not. But whatever happened to his term for 8 years ago, what happened between Joe Biden's term for the past 4 years, were the idea was to make American, buy Americans. But we're still importing shit from other countries? Whatever happened to being American made? So I don't understand this tariff shit. Well, I do.
Guarantee tomorrow.
I don't care about it.
I can say that if you look at just pre-COVID, we had the greatest economy in the history of our country. And I had a lot of tariffs on a lot of different countries, but in particular China. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars, and we had no inflation. In fact, when I handed it over, they didn't have inflation for a year and a half. They went almost 2 years, just based on what I had created. And then they created inflation with energy and with spending too much. So I think we will. I'm a big believer in tariffs. I think tariffs are the most beautiful word. I think they're beautiful. It's going to make us rich.
Great bargaining tool.
We're subsidizing Canada to the tune of over $100 billion a year. We're subsidizing Mexico for almost $300 billion. We shouldn't be subsidizing. Why are we subsidizing these countries? If we're going to subsidize them, let them become a state. We're subsidizing Mexico, and we're subsidizing Canada, and we're subsidizing many countries all over the world. And all I want to do is I want to have a level, fast, but fair playing field.
Sir, your previous tariffs during your first administration cost Americans some $80 billion. And now you have major companies from Walmart, Black & Decker, AutoZone saying that any tariffs are going to force them to drive up prices for their consumers. How do you make sure that these CEOs, that these companies don't, in fact, pass on the cost of tariffs to their consumers?
They cost Americans nothing. They made a great economy for us. They also solve another problem. If we were going to have problems having to do with wars and having to do with other things, tariffs, I have stopped wars with tariffs by saying, you guys want to fight, it's great, but both of you are going to pay tariffs to the United States at 100%. And they have many purposes, tariffs, if properly used. I don't say you use them like a madman. I say properly used. But it didn't cost this country anything. It made this country money. And we never really got the chance to go all out because we had to fight COVID in the last part. And we did it very successfully. And when I handed it over to Biden, the stock market was higher than what it was just previous to COVID.
Just so we're clear, more Americans died under Joe Biden during COVID than Donald Trump by a large margin.
Coming in was actually higher. Tariffs are properly used, are a very powerful tool, not only economically, but also for getting other things outside of economics.
Well, again, prices did go up on some goods in your first administration, washing machines, tires. Will you punish CEOs?
Let me just explain to you. No. You mentioned washing machines.
I
So
got
you
one.
look at Whirlpool in Ohio.
What
I got a call
are those
from
fucking
Jim
Japanese
Jordan,
tire places? They got a factory not that far from here. Many jobs, just like the LG plant and Google. I live by a Google area. Oh shit.
Here's the definition of area: a region or part of a town,
congressman
a
from
country,
Ohio.
or the world.
And he said, they're going out of business because South Korea and China are dumping washing machines into our country. And I put a 50% tariff on the washing machines coming in from China and South Korea. And Whirlpool and the companies that made washing machines, which are based in Ohio, largely based in Ohio, went through the roof. We saved thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. They were all going out of business because they were dumping washing machines. And when I put the tariffs on, they became successful businesses. No, it didn't. Not only didn't it cost people, it made our country stronger and more powerful, and it kept jobs.
But how do you make sure that consumers don't wind up paying more? Will you punish CEOs who try to pass the cost of tariffs on to their customers?
Well, the market's going to take care of it. I mean, actually, the market takes care of it. And if it doesn't, we adjust it somewhat. But in the case of Whirlpool, or let's say companies that made washing machines, they were all being put out of business by the dumping from, in particular, South Korea and China. And when I put the tariffs on, very substantial tariffs, although peanuts compared to what people do to us, what countries do to us, it became a very, very powerful, successful company. Now, let's say I didn't do the tariffs. It would have gone out of business. You would have lost tens of thousands of jobs, and you don't include that in your equation. No, they make a lot of money. I'll go a step further. Tariffs are going to make our country rich. Tariffs are going to help us pay off $35 trillion in debt. Tariffs are going to make our country safe because China, as an example, doesn't want to play games with us if we're going to do tariffs on them. They don't want to play games. And we have a lot of games being played on us right now.
Well, I think, and that takes me to my next question. Yeah. Are you actually going to impose these tariffs, or are they a negotiating tactic?
Well, I'll give you an example.
More animated this time.
With Canada, and in particular Mexico, we have millions of people pouring into our country. You agree with that. I spoke with I spoke with Justin Trudeau. In fact, he flew to Mar-a-Lago within about 15 seconds after the call ended. Yeah. He was at Mar-a-Lago. We were having dinner talking about it. I said, you have to close up your borders because they're coming in the northern border too a lot. Not like the southern border, but they're coming in the Canadian border a lot. And drugs are pouring in. Almost as importantly, drugs are pouring in, maybe more importantly, drugs are pouring in at levels never seen before, 10 times what we had. They're just pouring in. We can't have open borders. And I said to the president of Mexico and to Justin Trudeau, if it doesn't stop, I'm going to put tariffs on your country at about 25%. That's a very substantial tariff. And in the case of, in both cases, but in the case where it was really visible, within 10 minutes after that phone call, we noticed that the people coming across the border, the southern border, having to do with Mexico, they were at a trickle, just a trickle. It was, in fact, I call the border. See, unlike my opponent, I do call the border a lot. And I said, how's the border looking today? They said, there's nobody here. They couldn't believe it. The military stopped these vast groups of people. You know, we call them caravans.
Some of them are turning around.
Caravans of people, and they largely stopped them. Now, they're going to have to continue that, but if they don't continue, and the other thing I told them is...
What's up, Rockstar? How do you doing, brother?
To China, too. I had to deal with President Xi. Had the election been different, I'm going to be very nice because we don't have to get into an argument over 2020, but had the election been different, the result been different, we would have had China giving the maximum penalty, which is the penalty of death, to people that sent fentanyl into this country. But Biden didn't, unfortunately, finish that discussion up. I had an agreement with President Xi, who I got along with very well. We've had communication as recently as this week. And I had communication with him where they were going to give the death penalty to anybody sending drugs into the United States.
This week you had that conversation.
Not that conversation, but I had other conversations. Okay. But in the past, I've had that conversation.
Let me ask you about another aspect of the economy, sir, the minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 since 2009. There are 20 states
I remember when it was
that still
$4.75.
have the federal minimum wage at $7.25. And I actually have a map. 19 of these states actually voted for you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Minimum wage in my area is $12 to $15.
And you can see it right here. I don't know if you remember this, but during the debate in 2020, I asked you if you would raise the minimum wage. You said you would consider it. And so my question for you is, now that you are going back to the White House, for these 19 states that voted for you, are you going to raise the federal minimum wage?
It's a very low number. I will agree. It's a very low number. Let me give you the downside, though. Yeah. In California, they raised it up to a very high number. $25. And your restaurants are going out of business all over the place. The population is shrinking. It's had a very negative impact. But there is a level at which you could do it, absolutely. Yeah.
What is that level?
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I can say this. You have a lot of businesses that are open and thriving because of the lower minimum wage. If you raise it too much, and you understand this, if California went crazy, they went crazy. And people, the restaurants are closing all over. Many more people are hurt.
So I hear you saying, similarly to sort of what you said in 2020, will you consider it? Is this something you're going to look at?
I'd want to speak to the governors. And the other thing that's very complicated about minimum wages is places are so different. Mississippi and Alabama and great places are very different than New York or California. Right. I mean, in terms of the cost of living and other things. So it would be nice to have just a minimum wage for the whole country, but it wouldn't work because you have places where it's very inexpensive to live, where a minimum wage, which is $8 or $9, might be, might have very little effect because the cost of living in certain places is really low.
Before we move on to immigration, which I do want to talk about, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said he will not leave his post even if you ask him to. Will you try to replace Jerome Powell?
No, I don't think so. I don't see it. But I don't. I think if I told him to, he would. But if I asked him to, he probably wouldn't. But if I told him to, he would.
You don't have plans to do that right now?
No, I don't.
Okay, let's talk about mass deportation, one of your big agenda items. You've talked about prioritizing people who have criminal histories.
Correct.
But is it your plan to deport everyone who is here illegally over the next 4 years?
Well, I think you have to do it. And it's a very tough thing to do. But you have to have, you have rules, regulations, laws. They came in illegally. The people that have been treated very unfairly are the people that have been online for 10 years to come into the country. And we're going to make it very easy for people to come in terms of they have to pass the test. They have to be able to tell you what the Statue of Liberty is. They have to tell you a little bit about our country. They have to love our country.
Your green card, it doesn't take 10 years. To get your citizenship, you have to have had a green card for a minimum of 10 years. So those are legal immigrants coming here to become American citizens. Now, the green card holders, you got to wait in line. And they don't take 10 years, especially if you have clean records.
Can't come out of prisons. We don't want people that are in for murder. So we had 11,000 and 13,000 different estimates, 13,099 murderers released into our country over the last 3 years. They're walking down the streets. They're walking next to you and your family, and they're very dangerous.
The 13,000 figure, I think, goes back about 40 years.
No, it doesn't. No, it's within the 3-year period. It's during the Biden term. No, that was a fiction that they put that out. This was done by the Border Patrol. It's 13,099, and it's during the Biden period of time. And these are murderers, many of whom murdered more than one person. You don't want those people in this country.
But you're saying something, sir, that's significant. I just want to make sure I'm clear, which is that you're saying, yes, you're going to focus on the people with criminal histories, but everyone who's here illegally has to go.
I'm saying this. We have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to get people that were taken out of mental institutions and put them back into their mental institution, no matter what country it is. Do you know that Venezuela, their prisons are
empty,
at the lowest point in terms of emptiness that they've ever been? They're taking their people out of those prisons by the thousands, and they're drunk. And just to get back, because I know exactly what you're getting at. Number one, we're doing criminals, and we're going to do them really rapidly. We're getting the worst gang probably with MS-13, and the Venezuelan gangs are the worst in the world. They're vicious, violent people. And you see what they've done in Colorado and other places. They're taking over, literally taking over apartment complexes and doing it with impunity. They don't care. They couldn't. They just are. They're in the real estate business.
You know, the local police say that is not the case in Colorado.
Oh, it's totally the case. I mean, I have it on
you don't
tape.
believe the local police.
I play it. I used to play it at my rallies every single night. No, they're breaking into doors. They're taking over the building.
But sir, you
and by the way,
the point,
the police are afraid to do anything.
You raised the point that the logistics are complicated. You said
Sure
it yourself.
But everything's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, you need 24 times more ICE detention capacity just to deport 1 million people per year, not to mention more agents, more judges, more planes. Is it realistic to deport everyone who's here illegally?
You have no choice. First of all, they're costing us a fortune. But we're starting with the criminals, and we got to do it. And then we're starting with others, and we're going to see how it goes.
Who are the others?
Others are other people outside of criminals. We have convicted murders. We don't mean people that are even on trial. We have people that have murdered numerous people are on our streets and in our farms, and we have to get them out of our country.
What about dreamers, sir? Dreamers who were brought to this country illegally as children. You said once back in 2017, they, quote, shouldn't be very worried about being deported. Should they be worried now?
The dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about the dreamers, because these are people that have been brought here at a very young age, and many of these are middle-aged people now. They don't even speak the language of their country. And yes, we're going to do something about the dreamers.
What does that mean?
And
what are you going to do?
I will work with the Democrats on a plan, and if we can come up with a plan, but the Democrats have made it very, very difficult to do anything. Republicans have.
I like that. Democrats going to have a plan that, they can agree on dreamers. I like that. Let's see if they're honest about dreamers.
Very open to the dreamers. The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country. Many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people. And in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
you want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying.
I do. Okay. I want to be able to work something out. And it should have been able to be worked out over the last 3 or 4 years. And it never got worked out. Biden could have done it because he controlled, Congress to a certain extent, right? He could have done something, but they didn't do it. I never understood why, because they always seem to want to do it, but then when it comes down to it, they don't. I think we can work with the Democrats and work something out.
Let me ask you about another group of people, the estimated 4 million families in America who have mixed immigration status. So I'm talking about parents who might be here illegally, but the kids are here legally. Your borders are.
You're talking about separation.
And they tried saying that Donald Trump and Melania and Barron, well, not Donald Trump so much, but Barron shouldn't be here because his wife is from Ukraine. However, she did have citizenship, or green card or citizenship, when the kid was had, and the kid was Donald Trump's, born in the United States. He is an American citizen. People don't know how this works. And they just go off what the mainstream media says, and like, oh yeah, he was born by a illegal. She wasn't illegal. She was here legally, and she became a citizen. Barron Trump was already an American. My kids, 2 of them born overseas. 2 of them. They were born as American.
Yeah, well, there are 2 aspects to this. Your border czar, Tom Homan, said they can be deported together.
Correct.
Is that the plan?
Well, that way you keep well, I don't want to be breaking up families, so the only way you don't break up the family is you keep them together, and you have to send them all back.
Even kids who are here legally?
Well, what you're going to do if they want to stay with the father? Look, we have to have rules and regulations. You can always find something out like, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. I'll tell you what's going to be horrible. When we take a wonderful young woman who's with a criminal and they show the woman, and she could stay by the law, but they show the woman being taken out, or they want her out, and your cameras are focused on her as she's crying, as she's being taken out of our country, and then the public turns against us. But we have to do our job, and you have to have a series of standards and a series of laws. And in the end, look, our country is a mess. We have the highest crime rate, and during the debate, a man whose ratings have gone way down, David Muir, said to me, no, crime is, because I had to debate 3 people, not 1. Debating 1 was easy. Debating 3 was actually pretty easy, too, if you want to know the truth. But David Muir said, the crime rates have gone down. I said, no, they've gone up. And then the following day, they released the crime rates, and they were way up.
Yeah, the FBI statistics. You're talking about those FBI statistics.
Well, no, but he gave the wrong answer.
Confusing based on what you're looking at.
But a lot of that is migrant crime.
Let me ask you about another aspect of this.
Kristen, a lot of it's migrant crime.
Well, let me ask you about another aspect of this that I think a lot of people are really curious about. I mean, 3% of the people who are here illegally have criminal histories. But in your first administration, you had the zero tolerance policy, where we did see family separations.
Yeah.
You ended it. The purpose of that, though, to an extent, you talked about this at the time, was deterrent.
You also had it with Obama. You do know that.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
And you also know he built the jails for children.
He didn't have a zero tolerance policy.
But in 2014, he built the jails. You know that.
I love
you. I
you.
want to ask you about the zero tolerance policy. I mean, he didn't have a systemic, we're going to separate families. Families were separated when parents were a threat to the kids.
We don't have to separate a family.
This.
Excuse me, Kristen.
Yeah.
We don't have to separate families.
Yeah.
We'll send the whole family very humanely back to the country where they came. That way the family's not separated.
So no more family separations. You're not reviving the zero tolerance policy.
Well, it depends on the family. The family may decide to say, I'd rather have dad go, and we'll stay here. And in which case they have that option.
But you're not going to revive your zero tolerance policy, which was put in place as a deterrent. Is there any universe where you would bring that back, sir?
We need deterrence. Look, ready? When somebody comes here illegally, they're going out. It's very simple. When they come here illegally, they're going out. Now, if they come here illegally, but their family is here legally, then the family has a choice. The person that came in illegally can go out, or they can all go out together. And that was made very clear by Tom Homan.
So you're not, at this point in time, planning to revive that zero tolerance policy where kids are
Well, if you call
separated.
that, yeah, I'm doing what I just told you I'm going to do. I don't want to send the family out. I don't want to send anybody out. But I'll tell you, we have to, because otherwise we have no country. If we don't have borders, and if we don't have voting, good voting, fair voting, do you know they're still counting votes in San Diego, California? Listen, they're still counting the votes. This is almost 4 weeks. They're still counting the votes. If we don't have fair elections and honest voting and machines that work quickly, if you had paper ballots, every election will be over by 10 o'clock in the evening.
So, let me ask you.
You understand what I'm saying?
Let me, before we get
and
to...
you get a much more accurate count.
Before we get to all of that, let me ask you about some of your other promises on this topic. You've promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. Is that still your plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
The 14th Amendment, though, says that, quote, all persons born in the United States are citizens. Can you get around the 14th Amendment with an executive action?
Well, we're going to have to get a change. We'll maybe have to go back to the people, but we have to end it. We're the only country that has it.
Through an executive action?
We're the only country that has it. Do you know, if somebody sets a foot, just a foot, 1 foot, you don't need to, on our land, congratulations, you are now a citizen of the United States of America. Yes, we're going to end that because it's ridiculous.
Through executive action?
Well, if we can, through executive action. I was going to do it through executive action, but then we had to fix COVID first, to be honest with you. We have to end it. It's ridiculous. Do you know we're the only country in the world that has it? Do you know that? There's not one other country.
What about the legal challenge, inevitable legal challenges that'll come?
Do you know we have thousands of judges? Somebody walks onto our land, and we have to now say, welcome to the United States. They could be a criminal or not a criminal. We release them into our country. It's called catch and release. We release them into our country. Wait, just 1 second. And now they get them lawyers. And the lawyers are good lawyers. And everybody has a lawyer. And do you know how many judges we have? Thousands. Thousands. Now, here's what other countries do. They come into the land and they say, I'm sorry, you have to go. And they take them out. Okay? With us, once they touch our land, we're into litigation that lasts for years, costs us hundreds of billions of dollars. We have judges, and I'm sure they're all honest, but I don't know that for a fact. You can imagine what's going on with the judges. But just so you, because I have a lot of judges, I tell you what, I know more about judges than any human being in history. Look.
No, he doesn't.
We have judges. Every time somebody puts 2 feet or even 1 foot on a piece of our land, it's welcome to long-term litigation. Other countries, every other country, when somebody walks on and they see that they're here illegally, they walk them off, they take them back to where they came from. We have to get rid of this system. It's killing our country.
Let's talk about health care. I've been talking to Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill. They say it's no longer feasible to repeal and replace Obamacare because it's so entrenched in the system. Do you see it that way? Is that now off the table, repealing and replacing
when John
Obamacare?
McCain let us down by voting, and Murkowski and Collins and whoever it was that voted against, but they really let us down. They did us a great disservice because we would have had great health. Obamacare is lousy health care. It's very expensive health care for the people. It's also expensive for the country, but for the people. It's lousy health care. When John McCain gave his thumbs down after saying for 10 years that he wants to repeal and replace, okay? And then he came out, put his now famous thumbs down, and he became a hero to the left. Let me tell you, if we find something better, I would love to do it. But unless we find, but one thing I have to say, I inherited Obamacare or anything else you want to go. It's got about 20 names, but I inherited it. And I had a decision to make with Health and Human Services. I had a big decision to make. Do I make it as good as we can make it, or do I let it rot? And a lot of political people said, let it rot and let it be a failure. I said, that's not the right thing to do. And I had very good people in the medical area that handled that. And I said, what do you want to do? He said, we really have an obligation to make it as good as we can. And we did. We made it as good as we can make it. Instead of making it bad where everybody would be calling for its repeal, I made it so that it works. Now,
but you did try to overturn it, sir.
Well, it's lousy.
You did try to overturn it. You did have your Justice Department try to direct the Supreme Court to overturn it.
We got a little bit of a surprising opinion, to be honest with you. If it would have been overturned, we would have had much better health care right now. But right now, we have something that I made the best of. I could have made the worst of it, and it would have fallen by the wayside. I did the right thing from a human standpoint, but, I'm sort of proud of my decision. At the same time, sometimes I regret it. I told the people, and I gave them the money to do it. I said, fix it, make it work, because people would have suffered. But it's too bad that they voted no. I wish John McCain, he fought for 10 years on replacing Obamacare, for 10 years, and then he voted against. Nobody understands it.
Sir, you said during the campaign you had concepts of a plan. Do you have an actual plan at this point for health care?
Yes, we have concepts of a plan that would be better.
Still just concepts? Do you have a fully developed plan?
Let me explain. We have the biggest healthcare companies looking at it. We have doctors. We're always looking because Obamacare stinks. It's lousy. There are better answers. If we come up with a better answer, I would present that answer to Democrats and to everybody else, and I do something about it. But until we have that, or until they can approve it, but we're not going to go through the big deal. I am the one that saved Obamacare, I will say, and I did the right thing. I could have done the more political thing and killed it, and all I had to do is starve it to death.
You did try to have your Justice Department effectively kill it, though,
No.
sir.
Kill it from a legal standpoint, but from a physical standpoint, I made it work.
In your concepts of a plan, sir, will people with pre-existing conditions still have coverage? And can you guarantee their prices will not go up?
The answer is yes. They'll have coverage. You have to have it.
And what about their prices?
Because you know what?
What about their prices, sir?
I want the prices to go down. I want to have better health care for less money. And there are ways of doing it, I believe. And I have the smartest people in that world. You know, that's a separate world unto itself. I have the smartest people in that world looking at it and trying. And if they come up with something, I will present it. Now, maybe you won't be able to sell it. But if we get better health care for less money, I believe it's very saleable.
Just very quickly, when will we see your fully developed plan? When are you going to show the public?
I don't know that you'll see it at all. I can only say that we have some of the best healthcare people. I've always tinkered with it.
So
I think it's a little hard to explain. Obamacare, when I took it over, was a disaster. And I made it
has
workable.
insured 20 million people.
Yeah, because of me. Because of me. If you look at what I did, I was the one. I made it good.
You tried
legally.
To repeal and replace it. You tried to kill it,
because if I repealed
sir.
it and replaced it, we would have had a better system because we wouldn't have had health care. And the Democrats would have been forced to do something. If we wouldn't have had it, the Democrats would have been forced to do something that they wouldn't do if we have it.
Let me ask you about another aspect of healthcare. You talked about this on the campaign trail, right. IVF. You promised free IVF for all who want it, either through the government or through mandates with insurance companies. I've been hearing from Republican senators, some of them, who say they're not going to support that plan. How are you going to get that passed?
Well, we're going to see. We want them to pay, ideally the insurance companies to pay for it, the fertilization. I came out very early for a Republican especially, and I think they were looking for my guidance, my great wisdom, right? They were looking for it. And I got a call from Katie Britt, who's a terrific person, senator from Alabama. And she said, sir, we just had a really negative ruling from a judge in Alabama, conservative judge, that all of these clinics had to be closed. And she said, and she went into great detail, and she said people are devastated over it. And after literally speaking to her for 5 minutes, I issued an order, really an order in a sense. And it was a statement from the Republican Party that we are all for IVF and fertilization. Okay. The Alabama legislature met the following day and passed it. It was a beautiful thing to see. And I consider myself to be the father of IVF in a certain way. And the Republicans were very strong on the issue.
But, sir, I want to understand where it falls in your list of priorities. I mean, is this something we can expect to see you try to move on in the first 100 days?
We're going to be talking about it, and we're going to be seeing. We have a lot of other things. I have tax cuts. You know, we'll be submitting in either the first or second package to Congress the extension of the tax cuts. So that might very well be in there, or it'll come sometime after that.
Let's talk about abortion, sir. You have taken responsibility for overturning Roe v. Wade. You've said that abortion is now a state issue. There are steps that you could take, though, as president, to restrict abortion through executive action without Congress. More than half of abortions in this country are medication abortions. Will you restrict the availability of abortion pills when you're in office?
I'll probably stay with exactly what I've been saying for the last 2 years, and the answer is no.
You commit to that?
Well, I commit. I mean, do things change? I think they change. I hate to go on shows like Joe Biden. I'm not going to give my son a pardon. I will not, under any circumstances, give him a pardon. I watched this, and I always knew he was going to give him a pardon, and sort of I don't like putting myself in a position like that. So things do change, but I don't think it's going to change at all.
Okay. Let's talk about some of your picks to fill out your administration. You named Kash Patel to be the next FBI director. Yeah. He has a list in his book of 60 people that he calls members of the so-called deep state. It includes Democrats like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. It includes former members of your cabinet, from Bill Barr to Christopher Wray. You campaigned on destroying the deep state. Do you want Kash Patel to launch investigations into people on that list?
No, I mean, he's going to do what he thinks is right.
Do you think that's right? Do you think that's right, sir?
If they think that somebody was dishonest or crooked or a corrupt politician, I think he probably has an obligation to do it. But
are you going to direct him to do it?
No, not at all. Not at all. We have two great people there. We have him and we have Pam. And Pam Bondi has been like a rocket ship. She's very popular and very good and very fair. And Kash Patel is very fair. I'll tell you, I thought Kash may be difficult because he's, you know, a strong conservative voice. And I don't know of anybody that's not singing his praises. The other day I was watching, and Trey Gowdy, who's a moderate person and very smart and very respected in the party, He's Cash's biggest fan. He said, this is the most misunderstood man in politics. He's great. I guess they worked together on the Russia hoax or something. And Trey Gowdy became a fan. You know Trey Gowdy. Everybody respects him. And, you know, just like him, others also. I don't know of one negative vote. I don't think he's going to have any negative votes.
Is it your expectation, though, that Kash Patel will pursue investigations against your political enemies?
No, I don't think so.
Do you want to see that happen?
If they were crooked, if they did something wrong, if they have broken the law, probably. They went after me, you know. They went after me and I did nothing wrong.
Well, let me ask you this. You said President Biden, quote, that you're going to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. You said that
Where
during
did I say that?
the campaign.
Where?
You said that on Truth Social, June 12th, 2023. I will appoint a real special prosecutor to go after the most corrupt president in the history of the United States, Joe Biden, and the entire Biden crime family. Are you going to do that? Are you going to go after Joe Biden?
I'm really looking to make our country successful. I'm not looking to go back into the past. I'm looking to make our country successful. Retribution will be through success. If we can make this country successful, that would be my greatest, that would be such a great achievement. Bring it back. We have a country now that's overridden with crime, that has millions of people that shouldn't be here, that should be in prisons in other countries, that should be in mental institutions. We have drug lords being dropped into our country and told never go back to their country. I'm looking to make our country great. I'm looking to bring prices down because, you know, I won on two things, the border, and more than immigration. You know, they like to say immigration. I break it down more to the border, but I won on the border and I won on groceries. It's a very simple word, groceries. Like almost, you know, who uses the word? I started using the word, the groceries. When you buy apples, when you buy bacon, when you buy eggs, they would double and triple the price over a short period of time. And I won an election based on that. We're going to bring those prices way down.
I want to pause here because what you're saying is significant. Because you wrote on Truth Social in 2023 that you're going to appoint a real special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. Now you're saying you're not going to do that.
I will say this. No, I'm not doing that unless I find something that I think is reasonable. But that's not going to be my decision. That's going to be Pam Bondi's decision and, to a different extent, Kash Patel. Assuming they're both there, and I think they're both going to get approved. But you know, while you ask me that,
hell yeah,
what they've done to me with weaponization is a disgrace.
We'll get to some of that.
No,
sir.
no, wait. You can't do one without the other. In the history of our country, nothing like this has ever happened. And I've won these cases. I've won every one, and the rest are in the process of being won. Deranged Jack Smith is on.
If he pardons all these foods from January 6th, is it retroactive? You know, inquiring minds would like to know.
On his way back to The Hague, where he can execute people. This is where he should have stayed. I think he's dangerous even being there. But I'll tell you what they've done to me in terms of weaponization, indictments, impeachments, and everything else. And in the end, it probably helped me because I got the biggest vote, the most votes any Republican's ever gotten in history.
Pam Bondi talks about investigating the investigators. Do you want her to investigate Jack Smith?
I want her to do what she wants to do.
Do you want to see Jack Smith investigated?
Well, I think he's very corrupt, but I want her to do whatever she has to do.
Are you going to direct her to prosecute Jack Smith?
She's a very smart person. She was a great attorney general in Florida. She's very experienced.
Bro,
I want her to do what she wants to do. I'm not going to instruct her to do it now.
Sir, are you going to fire the current FBI director, Christopher Wray, who you appointed?
Well, I can't say I'm thrilled with him. He invaded my home. I'm suing the country over it. He invaded Mar-a-Lago. I'm very unhappy with the things he's done. And crime is at an all-time high. Migrants are pouring into the country that are from prisons and from mental institutions, as we've discussed. I can't say I'm thrilled. I don't want to be Joe Biden and give you an answer and then do the exact opposite.
We're going to talk about
that. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to say is I certainly cannot be happy with him. You take a look at what's happened. And then when I was shot in the ear, he said, oh, maybe it was shrapnel. Where's the shrapnel coming from? Is it coming from heaven? I don't think so.
Space. Mars.
So we need somebody to straighten. You know, I have a lot of respect for the FBI, but the FBI's respect has gone way down over the last number of years.
Don't you have to fire him in order to make room
He
for
quit.
Kash Patel if he is in fact confirmed?
Well, I mean, it would sort of seem pretty obvious that if Kash gets in, he's going to be taking somebody's place, right? And somebody is the man that you're talking about.
Okay. Let's talk about Project 2025. This is the conservative policy blueprint. You disavowed it during the campaign. You called it a product of the radical right. You've said some of their ideas were abysmal.
I said some of it is. Some
Yeah,
of it is
some of it
very
is.
good.
A lot
Some
of it.
It's very mainstream, actually. Frankly, the Democrats should have used some of it because they went, you know, with all the transgender that they were doing and with the men playing in women's sports. Well, if they wouldn't have done that, maybe they would have done better.
Well, so you take me to my question. You're now giving people involved in Project 2025 prominent roles in your administration. Are you changing your mind about Project 2025? Is this now the policy blueprint for the second Trump administration?
Some people, if you take a look at the group, it was hundreds of people were involved. And I was actually, I reprimanded the whole group. I said, you shouldn't have placed this document in front of the voters because I have nothing to do with it and I'm the one that's running. You had no right to do this where you put a 1,000-page document in front. And many of those things I disagree with. Now, many of those things I happen to agree with. Many of those things Democrats should have agreed to. And I think they would have done much better in the election because they got slaughtered.
Well, I guess people see the list: Russ Vought, Brendan Carr, Peter Navarro, John Ratcliffe, Pete Hoekstra, Monica Crowley. And they think these are all of the people who were involved in or writing Project 2025. This must be a blueprint for work requirements, eliminating the Head Start program, criminalizing pornography. Is that what we can expect to see?
Well, I don't know how they voted. I don't know. I never spoke to them actually about it. And I purposely, and I told you, normally it would be just the opposite. I'd review every page. I purposely didn't even want to see it. Because when somebody like you asked me a question about Project 2025, I can honestly say I've never seen it. I have nothing to do with it. I didn't read it, but I did hear some things in there that I would totally disagree with. And I said to the people that were really the people behind it, you know who those people are? I said, you really had no right doing this to me because they used it as a soundbite, the Democrats. And I don't know, it couldn't have been too effective because they got slaughtered, but they did use it as a soundbite.
But to people who see, oh, he's bringing in all of these people from Project 2025, he must know what it is.
Well,
you know what?
I don't know what it is. No, I don't know what it is.
You still don't know what it is?
But I heard
All
certain things that I didn't like. And by the way, I heard certain things that are phenomenal. Okay?
Like what?
Like law and order. We want law and order. Okay? Little things like, let's put prisoners in jail. Let's not let people come out and raid every drugstore in Manhattan so that we have to put glass up and every store is going out of business.
Let me ask you about something you've referenced a couple of times in this interview. I asked you last time we sat down for an interview if you were going to pardon yourself. You said no. But now that President Biden has pardoned his son, Hunter, are you reconsidering? Might you pardon yourself?
I didn't do anything wrong. I was given the option. And the lawyers told me, a very specific lawyer, I don't have to go into who, but very high up in the administration said, sir, if you pardon yourself, you're going to look guilty. And you did nothing wrong. Oh, I had that option. I could have saved myself a lot of legal fees. But it turned out that I was right. Look at what's gone on. Everything's being dropped. I still have a Fani Willis, a total hoax. That's a total hoax. It's all being dropped. It's all been discredited. It's been dropped. There are those people that say, and this would be the first time in history, that all of those fake indictments, they were going after a political opponent. There are those that say that I actually did better in the election because of it. Now, that would be a first. I think you would agree, because normally that's like you go back to the microphones, you say, I'm leaving right now. I will leave office. I'm going back to my family, and I will fight for my name. Well, I had to fight for my name in public because I didn't leave office. But no, I didn't want to pardon, and I didn't want to pardon myself. I had the option to pardon myself.
And you don't want one now? You're not going to pardon yourself now?
What do I need one for? First of all, I've won almost all of the cases.
What if President
Biden...
Biden...
And the ones that I didn't win are on resuscitation.
What if President Biden offered you a pardon? Would you accept it?
I've never even thought about it. I don't think he'll do it. Look, if he did, he's the one that started this whole thing.
Yeah.
He got the Justice Department to go after me. And the state cases are all being run by the Justice Department, which is illegal. They had their people from the Justice Department work for Alvin Bragg in order to get something going. They worked for Letitia James in the state. He had his people go from the federal government and take lesser jobs in the state in order to get Donald
And you know
Trump.
he denies he had anything to do with it.
No,
and
you
there's
can't deny it. You know why?
Yeah.
Because they were there. Wait a minute. Wait. You know, you have a tendency to sort of like slough over things. You just made a statement. His person, the top, maybe the third or second or third person, left the federal government, the DOJ, and went to work for Letitia James.
Sure did.
And then, after they got that one started,
Bragg.
went to work for the DA.
Let me ask you about some of this new reporting. NBC News is reporting that President Biden is considering giving preemptive pardons to the likes of Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and Anthony Fauci. If President Biden doesn't issue those pardons, do you think they are going to wish that he had? Are they going to be pursued?
I can tell you this about Cheney, and she's a so-called Republican. I think she hurt the Democrats terribly. When I saw that Kamala put Cheney out on the campaign trail, I said, that's the end of Kamala. I really did. I thought it was a terrible move, especially if you're a Democrat. But Cheney did something that's inexcusable, along with Thompson and the people on the Unselect Committee of political thugs and, creeps. So the Unselect Committee went through a year and a half of testimony. Wait. They deleted and destroyed all evidence of that they found. You know why? Because Nancy Pelosi was guilty. Nancy Pelosi turned down 10,000 troops. You wouldn't have had a J6 because other people were guilty. The people that said that I attacked 2 Secret Service agents in a car. I grabbed one around the neck. I was then rebuffed, and I grabbed the other one. These are 2 of the toughest men anywhere on the planet. They happen to be slightly younger than me, maybe, just a little bit. Let me just tell you. They testified. They said it was total.
Oh, come on.
All of this stuff came out. People lied so badly. Now, listen, this was a committee, a big deal. They lied. And what did they do? They deleted and destroyed a whole year and a half worth of testimony. Do you know that I think those people committed a major crime.
Sir?
And Cheney was behind it.
Well,
and so was Benny Thompson and everybody on that committee.
We're going to.
For what they did,
Yeah.
honestly, they should go to jail.
Oh, I forgot.
So you think Liz Cheney should go to jail?
Yeah.
For what they did.
Everyone on the committee.
I think everybody anybody that voted in
Are
favor.
you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that, but I'm going to focus on drill, baby, drill.
When you say that,
on
it carries
strengthening the
weight, though. You've tapped these people to lead the Justice Department and FBI.
They can do whatever they want.
Okay.
Biden can give him a pardon if he wants to, and maybe he should. Just remember, Unselect Committee, a year and a half of sworn testimony, and after getting all of the testimony, they deleted it, and they destroyed almost everything. There's nothing left. It's unprecedented.
And they deny
If you
doing
do that in a civil case, you go to jail.
They deny doing that. And officials say that the order never came in for the National
put out
Guard.
a statement.
On January 6th, let me ask you this about January 6th. I think
Benny
you're going to want to
Thompson
answer
wrote
this.
in a statement that he has destroyed all evidence.
Let me ask you this about
It's
January
amazing.
6th.
I wish you could be you have such potential. If you could be just non-biased, you hurt yourself so badly. I'm telling you, they deleted and destroyed all the evidence. Everyone knows it. And you slough it off like it doesn't mean anything.
No, I'm
If
just
I
saying
did
they
it,
deny it. That's all I'm saying.
Kristen, if I did it, you would be standing up in that chair shouting at me. And you know what I'd do? I'd say, you got me. They have done something so illegal. They have a committee sworn to, and because it was so bad, the only reason they did it is because the testimony turned out to be in favor of me. Like Secret Service testified and disputed everything. It made them into a bunch of liars. Not Secret Service, it made the people. They got rid of it because it made Nancy Pelosi, the mayor of D.C., so many people
guilty,
look like criminals. And I will tell you, it's illegal for them to delete and to destroy that evidence.
Let me ask you about January 6th in a different capacity, okay? I think you're going to want to answer this question. You promised to pardon those who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Are you still vowing to follow through with that
dumb.
promise?
We're looking at it right now.
Now, those motherfuckers, those are fire. Especially when you're high.
Likely, yeah.
Well,
those people have suffered long and hard, and there may be some exceptions to it. I have to look, but if somebody was radical, crazy, there might be some people from Antifa there. I don't know, because those people seem to be in good shape. Whatever happened to Scaffold Man? You know who Scaffold Man was?
Yep.
He stood on a scaffold telling everybody to go, and nothing happened to him. Whatever happened to Ray Epps? Now, I don't know anything about Ray Epps, but it was sort of strange the way he was talking. Where is he? What happened to him?
Get him.
Because the people that did very little, they arrested an old woman because I don't think she did anything. They don't even know what she did. These people have suffered. Their lives have been destroyed. And yet in Portland, where they burn down half the city, they burn it down all the time. It's like a routine occurrence. They don't do anything. They attacked the courthouse, federal courthouse. They always say federal building. Okay. They destroyed the beautiful limestone exterior of the courthouse in Portland. They killed people in Portland. Seattle, people got killed.
Hearing that reminds me of my theory that a lot of this old world building that still exist, they put them in areas that are like fucking ridden with crime. So they get destroyed. And that courthouse would be a great example.
In Seattle, they took over a big chunk of the city. They took it over. They took the city away. Minneapolis, it looked like when they said this is a friendly protest, and yet over the poor slob from CNN, his shoulder, the entire city was burning down. It looked like World War II. Nothing happened. But wait, nothing happened. They took over the police statement. They took over the police station in Minneapolis. They burned it down. Nothing happened to anybody. And yet these people have been in jail, and I hear the jail is a hell.
And what about the one in Seattle? What was it called? Fucking Chai Tea. They took over a whole city or a whole street block, didn't they? Murders happening.
They've done reports, and you would say that's true. They've done reports. This is the most disgusting, filthy place. These people are living in hell. And I think it's very unfair. Most likely, I'll do it very quickly.
Very quickly. Okay, but some of them, 169 of them, have pleaded guilty to assaulting police officers.
Because they had no choice.
900 pleaded guilty to other crimes. They're also going to be eligible for a pardon from you?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a very tough system. Do you know almost nobody? I saw people that didn't even go into the building and they were convicted.
Right.
And you had the police saying, come on in, come on in. I mean, the police are saying, come on in, everybody, come on in. They had people, you have a lot of cameras. They don't want to release the tapes. They don't want to release the tapes.
So, but you're going to consider pardoning even those who've pleaded guilty to crimes, including assaulting police officers?
Well, sometimes they say, here's your choice.
You're not ruling it out.
Look, I know the system. The system's a very corrupt system. They say to a guy, you're going to go to jail for 2 years or for 30 years. And these guys are looking, their whole lives have been destroyed. For 2 years, they've been destroyed. But the system is a very nasty system.
Okay. Let's
I'm going to look at everything. We're going to look at individual cases,
Okay.
But I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first day.
Issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
By the way,
First day.
They've been in there for years, and they're in a filthy, disgusting place that shouldn't even be allowed to be open.
Let's talk about your cabinet picks. I know we started off talking about Pete Hegseth, but I just want to return to that very quickly. Have you gotten assurances from senators that he's going to be confirmed? Do you think he
can actually
make it?
have?
I think you will, yeah.
You've been meeting with a lot of them with positive
remarks.
remarks.
Saying he's fantastic.
You don't drink yourself.
No.
You've talked about how devastating drinking can be.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that the person who you picked for this top job at the Defense Department, at least according to those who've worked with him, has struggled with drinking?
But I've spoken to people that know him very well, and they say he does not have a drinking problem. And, he had a lot of knives out for him. A lot of people don't want to see the military made better.
Let me ask you about former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. You picked her to be the Director of National Intelligence. In 2017, she had 2 secret meetings with Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. Do you have questions or concerns about those meetings?
Affairs.
No. And he's got bigger problems right now.
Well, do you think it makes it hard for her?
His country is collapsing.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it compromises her ability to handle that?
I met with Putin. I met with President Xi of China. I met with Kim Jong-un twice. Does that mean that I can't be president?
Well, when you were president, they weren't secret meetings.
Look, people meet. All these people meet. I mean, I see some of the most dishonest people. I'll tell you, the 51 agents that said that the laptop wasn't from Hunter, it was from Russia. What about them? Tell me about them. Do you think they did something wrong? Do you think they were all so stupid that they thought that the laptop from hell?
So you have confidence in Tulsi Gabbard?
I do. So does she's a very respected person.
Let me ask you about RFK Jr. He has obviously talked about his skepticism of vaccines. He's expressed opposition to childhood vaccines. Do you want to see childhood vaccines eliminated?
If they're dangerous for the children. Look.
So possibly?
When you look at some of the problems, when you look at what's going on with disease and sickness in our country, something's wrong.
Are you talking about autism?
Well, if you take a look at autism, you go back 25 years, autism was almost non-existent. It was, 1 out of 100,000. And now it's close to 1 out of 100.
Well,
I mean, what's happening? If they can find it. Now, I did something the other night that was a little unusual. At Mar-a-Lago, I called the drug companies, the top drug companies, and I called RFK Jr. and Dr. Oz and some of his people. And I said, let's all get together and let's figure out where we're going. Because we're going to do a lot of things. Number one, we're going to reduce prices because the middleman makes more money than the drug companies, in all fairness to the drug companies. There's a middleman that nobody even knows who they are. And you look at our drug prices, they're much higher than the prices for the same medicine, for the same stuff. So we met, and met for a long time, and we talked about pricing, and we talked about vaccines, in terms of what happens. We talked about pesticides. We talked about everything. And I think a lot of good things are going to come from him. And he's not going to upset any system. He's not going to upset this. He's not looking to reinvent the wheel totally. But when you look at the numbers, we really don't have a very healthy country.
Well, sir, going back 25 years, studies show that there is no link between vaccines and autism. And yet it sounds like you are open to the possibility of him looking
I'm open to
getting rid of them?
I think somebody has to find out. If you go back 25 years ago, you had very little autism. Now you have it. I mean,
well, they say because they're better at identifying it.
1 in 100,000, and now it's 1 in 100. That's a pretty bad number.
Childhood vaccines.
What's up, hello? How you doing, brother?
I don't know if it's vaccines. Maybe it's chlorine in the water, right? People are looking at a lot of different things.
Well, childhood vaccines.
I want them to look at everything.
Everything. So childhood vaccines have prevented about 4 million deaths around the world every year.
I think that's great.
Isn't that...
I'm all for it.
Around the world.
Hey, look,
keep that in
I'm not
mind.
against vaccines. The polio vaccine is the greatest thing. If somebody told me get rid of the polio
Some
vaccine,
of those countries,
they're
their
going to have to work
disease is
real hard.
still prevalent there. So that's kind of a misinterpretation. Thanks the word.
To convince me. I think vaccines certain vaccines are incredible. But maybe some aren't. And if they aren't, we have to find out. But when you talk about autism, because it was brought up, and you look at the amount we have today versus 20 or 25 years ago, it's pretty scary.
Well, again, scientists say that's because they've gotten better at identifying it, and there's no link in
No,
studies.
The drug companies are going to be working with RFK Jr., and he's been an interesting guy to me. I've watched him for 25 years. And he's been an interesting guy.
Let's talk about Elon Musk, another interesting person.
He's very interesting.
Last month, one of your allies said, quote, he's behaving as if he's a co-president. Will you favor Elon Musk over other leaders of competitor companies like Jeff Bezos, Mary Barra?
No, Jeff Bezos called me. We're having dinner. as you know, Mark Zuckerberg came in. We had a really nice dinner. He asked to have dinner. I had dinner with him. I'm having dinner with everybody. People like me now. You know, it's something going on that people. I said, would you have come to dinner with me if I lost? I think the answer is no. You know, I said nicely, kiddingly, of course, because I don't want to sound foolish. But I say jokingly, would you have been here at dinner if I lost? And the answer was probably not. Look, I'm getting called by everybody. It's very interesting. It's different than the first. You know, when I won the first time, I wasn't nearly as popular as this. And one thing that's very important in terms of the election, I love that I won the popular vote, and by a lot. If I didn't,
1.6%.
because they would go with the other one. They say, while he didn't win the popular vote, he won a lot of. You know, I won a lot of the Electoral College, but they would always preface it by saying, now they say he won the popular vote and he won the Electoral College and he won all 7 swing states. That was a great election.
Very quickly, because we're going to talk about the election coming up, but you've tapped Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, to head up this Department of Government Efficiency.
Correct.
Which proposes cuts to the federal government. I think a lot of people hear that and they get concerned about Medicare and Social Security and
Not
Medicaid
going to have anything to do.
and defense spending.
We're talking
you
about
won't touch
theft,
Medicare, Social Security.
Abuse, fraud.
Okay.
No, I said
Fraud,
we're
waste,
not touching
abuse,
Social
wasteful
Security, other than we
spending.
make it more efficient. But the people are going to get what they're getting.
Okay, so the entitlements
And
off the table.
we're not raising ages or any of that stuff.
Okay,
No,
off the table.
I won't do it.
Okay, let's turn to foreign policy. Should Ukraine prepare for less aid from the United States after you're sworn into office?
Yeah, probably. Sure.
You've said you can end the war in
We're in
24
for 350 billion, and Europe is in for 100 billion. Why isn't Europe in for the same as us? The one thing that should happen is that Europe should come in they should equalize. And, you know, Biden, all he had to do, like I did with NATO, I said, you got to pay your bills. They weren't paying their bills. And as you know, the Secretary General said, President Trump got 600 billion, no, 640 to be exact. And I used to use the 400 billion number. He corrected me. He said, no, you actually got $641 billion put in, because I said you have to pay your bills. We were paying for NATO. And you know why I got the money? Because I asked for it. It wasn't that complicated. Europe is in for a fraction. And war with Russia is more important for Europe than it is for us. It's important for everybody, but it's more important for Europe than it is for us.
And you've said
we have a little thing called an ocean in between us.
You said you can end the war in 24 hours. You've even said you want to try to end it before you're sworn into office.
I'm trying to end it
You're
if I
actively
can.
trying to?
I am.
Have you talked to President Putin?
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to President Putin
No, I have
since
not.
you've been elected?
No, well, I don't want to say that, but I haven't spoken to him recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've
I
been
don't
elected?
want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that because I don't want to do anything that could impede the negotiation.
But you
I want to
have
stop
talked
it.
about
Let me
the
tell you
other
what I
world
have talked
leaders.
about. Let me tell
Okay.
you. There are people being killed in that war at levels that nobody's ever seen before. You have to go back to the Second World War, and even that, if you take a look at, and you know what it is? It's the soldiers largely. The cities have been emptied out and demolished. The country has been demolished. If I won that election, which you know how I feel about it, I won't get into it because we don't need to start that argument. I think it's an easy argument. It was really proven even more conclusively by the win that I had on this one. But
you did go to court, sir. You did.
Well, that's your opinion,
Yeah,
but I
okay.
disagree with it. Had I kept control, number one, Israel wouldn't have happened. Number two, Ukraine would have never happened. It would have never happened, Ukraine, Russia. But the number of people that are being killed, soldiers, young, beautiful soldiers, hundreds of thousands of people are being killed. And, you know, it's very interesting. It's level, totally level. The battlefields, totally level. You know what's happening?
Yeah.
The only thing that stops a bullet, you know what it is a body, a human body. And the people that are being killed, hundreds of thousands on both sides. Russia's lost probably 500,000.
Devastating.
Ukraine's lost higher than they say, probably 400,000. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of bodies laying all over fields. It's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, and it should have never been allowed to happen. Biden should have been able to stop it.
Sir, will the United States stay in NATO while you're in office?
In where?
No.
NATO. Do you commit that the United States will remain a member of NATO while you're in office?
Again, they have to pay their bills. If they pay their bills, absolutely.
But not if they don't pay their bills.
But NATO's taken advantage of us because we were, look, two things. Number one, they take advantage of us on trade, meaning the European nations, okay, like terrible. They don't take our cars, they don't take our food product, they don't take anything. It's a disgrace. And on top of that, we defend them. So it's a double whammy. So let me just tell you, I was able to get hundreds of billions of dollars put into NATO just by a tough attitude. I said to the countries, I'm not going to protect you unless you pay. And they started paying. And that amounted to more than $600 billion. That's a big thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't even be fighting. They wouldn't have any money to fight. If they're paying their bills, and if I think they're doing they're treating us fairly, the answer is absolutely, I'd stay with NATO.
But if not, you would consider the possibility of
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's turn to the Middle East now, sir. There are still American hostages being held in Gaza.
Yeah.
You said this week that if the hostages aren't released before Inauguration Day, quote, there will be all hell to pay.
Correct.
What exactly did you mean? And do you still think that the hostages are alive?
I'm not a big believer in the fact that there are too many of them living, sadly, because I've seen the way they've been treated. I talk about the young girl that was pulled by her hair violently and thrown into the back of a car like she was a sack of potatoes. And I said, you know, that's hatred. And then I said, how did that young girl do? Beautiful young girl just dragged by her hair. You remember, blood pouring all over her body. You can imagine the parents thrown into the back of a car by some horrible guy. And I said, how is she? She's dead. She died, sir. I don't think you have as many. I mean, I hate to say it. I think you have far fewer hostages than people think.
Really?
Have you it's only my opinion, but
Okay.
I've been right on just about everything.
Are you going to pressure Prime Minister Netanyahu, with whom you have a very good relationship, to end the war in Gaza?
Yeah, sure.
And
I
have
want
you
him to
already
end it.
started that process?
I want him to end it, but you got to have a victory. People forget about October 7th. That was as violent. And you know what's happening? I noticed that a lot of people are saying, oh, it never really happened. That's like the Holocaust. You know, you have Holocaust deniers. Now you have October 7th deniers, and it just happened. No, October 7th happened. And I've seen the pictures. What happened is horrible.
If China invades Taiwan on your watch, are you committed to defending Taiwan?
I never say.
Still won't say.
I never say because I have to negotiate things, right?
Can you just say if you'll defend it? I'm not saying if the U.S. military.
I'd prefer that they don't do it. I have a very good relationship with President Xi. We have been communicating with each other.
Since you were elected?
Yes.
And you sent that message?
Since like 3 days ago. Yes, we communicate.
And you sent that message to him, don't invade Taiwan?
We didn't talk about that. Okay. We talked about other things. But I have a very good relationship, and I hope he doesn't do it.
This week, a federal court upheld a law that could result in TikTok being banned. You said you're going to rescue TikTok when you get into office. Are you going to take steps to protect it?
Yeah, and as you know, I use TikTok very successfully in my campaign. I have a man named TikTok Jack. He was very effective, obviously, because I won youth by 30%. All Republicans lose youth. I don't know why. Maybe it's changing. And last time we were down 30% with youth. This time we're up 35% with youth. And I use TikTok, so I can't really, I can't totally hate it. It was very effective. But I will say this, if you do that, something else is going to come along and take its place. And maybe that's not fair. What they're doing, and really what the judge actually said was that you can't have Chinese companies. In other words, they have the right to ban it if you can prove that the Chinese companies own it. That's what the judge actually said.
So are you going to try to protect TikTok, just very quick, once you're in office?
I'm going to try and make it so that other companies don't become an even bigger monopoly.
Okay.
Because that's what happens.
We're winding down, and I know you have a plane to catch.
I do.
This is your first interview since you won the election.
Congratulations.
Yes,
I hope
congratulations to you.
I hope you do well.
Yes, and sir, I don't have to tell you this because you've talked about it. It comes at a time when the country is deeply divided. And now you're going to be leading this country for the next 4 years. For the sake of unifying this country, will you concede the 2020 election and turn the page on that chapter?
No. No, why would I do that? But let me just tell you, when you say the country is deeply divided, I'm not the president. Joe Biden's the president.
But you're going to be the president.
No. I'm not the president. So when you say it's deeply divided, I agree. But Biden's the president. I'm not. And he has been a divider. And you know where he divided it
I
more
will
than
say,
anything
thinking
else?
about
Probably.
there was a bigger division. I'm not saying there wasn't any between the first Trump administration, but the gap got wider and wider and wider under Biden. It's insane.
Backfired on him. I think definitely is weaponization. When he weaponized the Justice Department and he went after his political opponent, me, he went after his political opponent violently because he knew he couldn't beat him. And I think it really was a bad thing. And it really divided our country.
Sir, Democrats have control of the White House now. They didn't in 2020. If they are going around stealing elections, why
when you
didn't
say
they do it
Democrats
this
have
time?
control now
Of the White House.
Yeah.
So why didn't they steal this election?
It was
Since they
too
have more
big.
power now.
because I think it was too big to rig.
So you won't.
Too big to rig.
Too many eyes on
To the
it.
people who say that you're now directing your Justice Department to investigate 2020, and they want to move on.
I have very capable.
Is that
I think
a
Pam
good
is going to
use
be
of
great.
precious resources?
By the way,
is that what you
just so
want them
know,
to do?
Just so you know, I have the right to do that, but I'm not interested in that.
Oh, you're
I
not.
wanna-
You're not
I
gonna
wanna
do that.
I'm not interested. I have
Okay.
the absolute right. I'm the chief law enforcement officer. You do know that. I'm the president. But I'm not interested in that. You know what I'm interested in? Drilling and getting prices down and stopping people from pouring into our border that come from prisons and mental institutions.
I like that.
Last two questions here. One of the things that made this campaign unprecedented and extraordinary were the horrific attempts against your life. 2 assassination attempts. Do you feel safe going into the White House
I do.
for the next 4 years? Why?
I have confidence in Secret Service. I know the people. I got to know a lot of them, and I have confidence. It was
Watch
a
out
bad
for those
moment.
drones.
Something shouldn't have happened, but I have a lot of confidence, and they've really stepped it up. They were restricted from giving the look. I do a rally, and you were at many of them, and I'd have 50,000 people. Joe would have a rally, and he'd have 30 people.
Wouldn't put it past Israel being behind these drones, right? And then something happens to the president. And they're going to already blaming the drones on Iran.
People. And he had more Secret Service than me. My Secret Service was always asking for more manpower / women power. They were asking for more and more and more, and they couldn't get it.
Power.
I'm not blaming them really, because they were always fighting for more people, and they wouldn't get. Now, boy, do we have it.
I know it was hard on your entire family. What can people expect from the First Lady in this second administration? What role will she play? She obviously had her Be Best campaign.
She's very liked, loved, and she's very respected, and she's a very solid person, and she devotes a lot of time to helping children. You know what she does, and she's got her Be Best deal that is incredible what she's done. The one thing I say, whether it's First Lady or my children did such a good job, and they were treated very badly by the press and others. Ivanka was unbelievable what she did, and she all she wanted to do is one thing: get people jobs. She could have been the UN secretary. I said to her, she would have been unbelievable. She's got the whole package for that, including right up there. She's as smart as they. She didn't want. She said, "Daddy, I want to work on getting people jobs." You know, she'd go to Walmart, she'd go to X such a. She produced millions of jobs for people.
Did Melania call you
Glamorous.
daddy?
Most people didn't know she did it, and she was always being excoriated.
I like
and
it.
I said to my kids, "Don't come in. Don't come in. It's just."
You said to them, "Don't."
I said to them, "Yeah." I said,
But will you miss having them there? Will it
I'll
feel
miss 'em.
different? They were your
I'll miss
top
'em, and
advisors.
I'll tell you what, I'll miss them, and they're really competent. But I say, just go have fun, do your business, do whatever you want to do, but don't come in, because no matter what they did such a great job. Although I have to say, Lara did a phenomenal job as the head of the Republican National Committee, along with Michael.
What will the First Lady's role be, do you think? Will she continue her Be Best campaign?
She's a very elegant first lady. She
And
was
he
a very
calls you daddy.
successful woman before that
That's right, bro.
in the modeling and other things,
Got
but
that.
in the
Got
modeling,
that.
very successful. The press, I can't say treated her unfairly. You know why? Because she's very popular. You would think if the press was unfair, like to me, the press was obviously unfair to me. The press, no president has ever gotten treated by the press like I was. And yet I got more votes than any Republican candidate in history. By far. It's not even close. So you say, what's that all about? The press has to straighten itself out because honestly, it's lost all credibility. When that can happen, based on the press, I should have gotten no votes, none. And yet I got the highest number ever. And the reason is because I'm able to go on a show, even like yours, even though you're very hostile, I'm able to go on a show like yours. No, you are.
Well, hopefully you thought it was a fair interview. We covered a lot of policy ground.
It's fair only in that you allowed me to say what I say. But, the answers, the questions are, pretty nasty. But look, because I've seen you interview other people like Biden. And
I've never interviewed President Biden.
When I say you, I'm talking metaphorically.
Okay.
I've seen George Stephanopoulos interview Biden. And he's a tough interviewer. It's the softest interview. I've seen CNN interview him. They give these soft, what's your favorite ice cream? It's a whole different deal. I don't understand why. You would think the press would like to see strong borders, great education, a powerful military, so we have a country left, and all these different things. And somehow they don't want to see that.
Let me ask you, hopefully you...
Yo. What if Vivek prepared him with that statement right there? Because he doesn't like Welker and he knows how to shut her the fuck up.
I think this interview was fair. We spent a lot of time talking about your policy and your second administration. I want to ask you, sir, one final question. What do you want to say to Americans who didn't support you in this campaign?
I'm going to treat you every bit as well as I have treated the greatest MAGA supporters. There's never been anything like MAGA in the history of this country. These people are so dedicated to making America great again. It's very simple. And I'm going to treat them just the same as I treat MAGA. We're going to treat everybody good. We want success for our country. We want safety for our country. Our country is under threat, as you know. We have a tremendous threat militarily because of the power of weapons and weaponry. It's a tremendous threat. Nobody talks about it, but it's a tremendous threat. I want to treat everybody the same. I want to treat them well. And at the end of this 4 years, and I have a big head start because I was there for 4 years fairly recently. A lot of bad things were done during the 4 years that I wasn't there, and mostly in what they've done in terms of our reputation overseas. Our reputation is so bad, so shot. I got to bring it back, and I also have to bring back civilization to our country. Our country is a crime pot, and we have to get rid of crime. We have so many things to do. We have to do the prices. We have to do all of that. But we have to get the criminals out of our country. We have to bring down crime. People have to be able to walk across the street and buy a loaf of bread without being shot. And that's going to happen. But what I say to them is, I love you, and we're going to all work together, and we're going to bring it together. And you know what's going to bring it together? Success. I saw that just prior to COVID coming in, I had polls that were the highest anyone. McLaughlin and Fabrizio said, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, if they came back from the dead and they ran as president and vice president, couldn't beat you, sir. We were doing so well. And I was getting along with the left. Let's call it the left. Would be nice. Okay, we're just going to call it. But I was getting along with people that you would consider liberal or progressive, as they like to say, at levels that I never thought was possible. And you know what it was? Success. Success was bringing the country together, and that's what I want to do.
We'll leave it there unless you'd like to say anything more.
Thank you very much.
That is number 45. And number 47, your President of the United States, Donald Trump. So the interviews were pretty much similar. Obviously, we know a year ago when they did it, election hadn't happened. And not much really has changed. Even the pardon question came up. I hope he did it the first time. We really just need to get out of NATO altogether. I mean, NATO is pointless now. The UN should pay their fair share too. And they're going to have to. And I have a feeling that funding for Israel will be on the table. The funding will be decreased, and then something will happen. Something will happen that'll create World War III. But that's just a fantasy world, because nothing like that would ever happen. Our country and our government and the world would never do something so bad. Israel is the country that needs to be protected, because they are the most underprivileged members of today's society, because, they, Daily Wire, shit like that. A lot of people, non-Jewish, quitting the Daily Wire lately. I wonder why. But anyway, like I said, that's our president. And I just wanted to see any differences, any policy changes, and just to see the whole reaction. Donald Trump's composure never changed between the two. Pretty fucking stoic. Welker was being a little, timid in the first interview, but this one, animated, more aggressive. I mean, still, I'd smash both versions. The 1 year ago and the current one. Well, it's only a year, so unless I got her pregnant in the initial one, then she came back and wanted another kid. I don't know how this works, guys. Alternate timelines, not my thing right now, because they're all the same. But I'm not telling y'all how to think, because fuck, you've already just seen my mind just go in 367 different directions at all. That made no sense either. But hope y'all enjoyed the throwback and the current day, because I could take tidbits and play the tidbits, which sometimes I do. But when I saw full interview, no edits, no cuts, and completely, hopefully uncensored, because it's not really uncut, because they did take out bullshit. So that was pretty unfair. But anyway, like I said, I'm not telling you how to think. I'm just telling you how to think. I hope you enjoyed the content for today. And Monday, I will really probably do a deeper dive into these drones, because Zippity opened up a whole world that I have brought into today's world. And I'm worried it might happen again. And I hope you all have a good rest of your day, good rest of the weekend. And yeah, I think that's about it.